Green.
I know where to go.
Rock and roll, man. Oh,
All right,
great
we're
microphones.
Good. You guys ready?
We're good.
Just waiting on Ed to pull this brief PowerPoint up.
These while we're waiting, I hope everybody had a good weekend.
Hot,
Yesterday was awesome.
packed beaches.
Yeah, but the humidity.
Yesterday was low humidity. Low humidity yesterday.
Just pull up.
Sometime.
So, it's not super critical, the PowerPoint, if you guys want me to go ahead. Yeah, it's really just an update on
Take your
the
time.
last council meeting we had. Citizen, that backs up to the Greenway had requested hours of operation posted. That request was taken to the TRC for review on the May 20th meeting. Basically, what came out of that meeting was the recommendation to not post hours and to operate on a pilot program through the summer to determine if that was actually needed. And kind of wanted to give you guys some of the factors in that decision that came out of the TRC. Was, many trail users prefer pre-dawn or after dark hours for runs, rides, etc., things like that. Also, one of the major benefits of the trail is to provide bike ped connection from Mike Chapel Park and the central residential areas, and the rapidly developing area of Wilmington Beach. School kids and Mike Chapel Park users are often attending sporting events and things that go on until post-dark hours, particularly in the winter when it gets dark around 5 o'clock. There are also approximately 15 homes adjacent to the trail, and there have been about 3 911 calls made during the last 5 months of off and on trail usage. And it seems like most of it's originating from one area. And it does seem unrealistic for law enforcement to enforce that particular posting of hours on that. So once again, the recommendation from TRC was to actually take no action, we'll operate on a pilot program through the summer to determine what's needed. If we wanted to go the route of signage, it's about $37 a piece, something similar to what you see here. Total cost of around $300 for like the six areas of entryway into it. Beyond that, open to recommendations for you guys.
What do you guys think?
We don't usually take action at this meeting.
No, just not looking to motion anything, but just any thoughts on Brian's TRC first and maybe what Brian's showing here.
Mhm.
3 calls were in the same area. You said, which area was that? Which
Yeah,
stretch at
that's-
the Greenway?
Chief?
It's, the ones that we got the calls were the area of, between Spartanburg and the south side of the lake, so that kind of, that stretch right there.
The first retention, well, I guess it depends on where you're running.
Behind Caroline Sands.
Behind Carolina Sands.
Yeah,
That retention pond, right? Okay.
good landmark.
Anybody respond or any, just,
Police did respond, but by the time we got there, there was suspicious activity.
Okay, I'll say it. None of us like the idea of putting signs up. I mean, I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate the concern. The overwhelming feedback I've gotten from the community is, no, we don't want any more signs. The police need to get out there and stop people from using motorized vehicles on the Greenway, whether it's night or day. So, I mean, the consensus I've heard from all you guys offline is, more signs, more signs. And already got signs. It's Greenway, you know. I appreciate the concern, but I'm gonna at least be candid with you. I don't think there's the support from the community or from our technical guys, or, and just to put up more signs, you know, it's just, but speak up, you guys.
No, excessive, I think, at this point, based on what you just showed, the empirical data right now. Got to go with the data, what the police is showing, 3 calls, that just doesn't seem to be grounds for action.
I mean,
right now.
I'm kind of
Right now.
indifferent on it. I think once people realize what their expectations are, it's just a working in progress to get people to understand what they need to be doing. I mean, I think, you know, we make something that's natural and it's supposed to stay that way, and then we put a bunch of signage up and things that, you know, make it not as natural. But, I mean, I'm in the middle somewhere, so whatever you guys want to do.
Well, I mean, I think the bottom line, whether you have signs or not, somebody's misusing the pathway, then the police need to respond, and which you have, and you'll continue to do so. And hopefully people will learn that they can't do that without some consequence. But it is a difficult place to patrol, because unless, you can't use motorized vehicles either. Unless you get the bicycles to go and patrol that regularly, it's gonna be hard to do. So, yeah, I don't think additions of signs, I mean, we put signs up everywhere, we put crosswalks everywhere. That's not stopped anybody, unless you're gonna build a wall across the street, I don't think it's gonna stop people. I mean, some people, obviously, the people that follow the rules are gonna follow it no matter what, but we've got some people that, you know, for whatever reason, they're not paying attention.
Hey, Chief, between now and the regular council meeting in 2 weeks, we'll ask you at that point in time, how many calls, how many responses, see them in the same place. I'm just looking for, personally, me, some trends right now, and I don't think the data at this point is compelling, frankly. Any other comments, guys?
I agree.
Yeah, I just, based on exactly what the chief said, I don't want to just jump into something right now. Not to dismiss what's being presented, but, you know, we got alligator signs, I don't want to go through it again. Steve knows what I'm talking about.
If it goes that way, Brian, it's about
Yeah.
$350 to put signs up.
300.
And then if you present and there's something really compelling, chief, we'll consider a motion at that time. Or just a direction. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's, yeah, the pilot, that's what they'll do, they'll evaluate at the end of the summer.
No, well, I'll follow up with the chief in June, 2 weeks from now at the council. If there's something, you know, that marked increase, then he'll report that to us. We won't wait yet till the end of the summer if it's something serious. Oh, you bet.
Thanks.
Ed?
Mayor, Council, I got these in the reverse order, so I'm going to skip down to my Marina update. So we're still trying to finish up the town marina. Last time we were trying to finish, we talked, which was a couple weeks ago, we're trying to finish up the electrical, water, sewer, some of that stuff, the rub rail that you see here. So all that's in. The only thing we're left that's not in is this is not our marina, but I just put it in here because this is a transition plate. So everywhere on the docks where you have a piece of a dock that connects another dock, there's a little gap. And that's a safety concern where we want to put those transition plates. And they were ordered a couple months ago by Don Evans is our contractor, and they just haven't come in yet. We're expecting them any day. As soon as those go in, then we are ready to open up the marina. There's no more safety concerns where we can have it open. The big thing with that would be the day docks on the end. We've got signs that have, we've sent off, it'll have all the rules on it, but that's at Southern Signs. I haven't seen the template back yet. So we'll get the signs up. That's not crucial for getting the day docks up. It is for enforcement. But the parking lot's been graded. There's a little bit down in the corner that utilities is still doing some work. and then we have to put some wheel stops in, and we'll be done with the parking lot. The pump out is was in poor condition. So I've actually been talking with the Clean Marina program to try to get us on the Clean Marina program. A big part of that is having the pump out. We want to have the pump out. So there's actually a grant where I can get money for that. And all I've got left, I'm working with Mark on it. We're trying to get a quote. We can get that new pump out and money for the new pump out. She's telling me, the Clean Marina program manager, fairly quickly. So we should be able to get that and put a new pump out in, I'm hoping sometime this summer. We've also, with the Clean Marina, we've got down here, there's some sorbent boom is what that is, and the pads. So we'll have a spill response kit on site at the marina is one of our requirements. And of course, I already talked about the rules. We'll be posting rules. We'll be posting, the pump out will be free is what we're proposing. You can charge up to $5, but we want to encourage people to use the pump out and not discharge or pump their sewage into Myrtle Grove Sound. The marina license agreements, I am meeting with Noel today to go through these. My hope is to get her agreement with me on the verbiage for the short term. I'm looking at, I got up here June 15th through September 15th. That I need a little help from you if you're okay. Just, I guess, heads nodding that you do have a, excuse me, a resolution for that was adopted. It says, hey, we're looking for charter boats. The west side can be any kind of charter boat. It doesn't have to be a fishing charter. I've got plenty of people that are interested, but I haven't advertised. Your policy says I have to advertise. If I advertise, then it's going to take me longer. But I got plenty of people that say, yes, I want to move forward. I can go ahead and fill them. And then if I have any issues with some of those people that are waiting, then I could go back and advertise and try to get some more.
How many slips over there?
There's 8 that we're going to be looking to fill.
And the transient on that side as well.
There's transient. The day boater docks are for 25 and under vessels, and that's the southwest corner.
How many of those?
It's just a open dock, so it's just dependent. And it's really, our mooring field's for over 25 feet, and the day boaters are for under 25. So it's really designed for maybe those dinghies that are coming in, or maybe just people that are out and about New Hammer County on their boat, and they want to come in and get a hamburger or walk there downtown. So it's a 3-hour limit, is what that's one of the rules that we posted on the signs, is you can park there for 3 hours and go out and enjoy a little bit of Carolina Beach.
How many of those is there?
It's open. I can get you to hold the length, but it's basically just an open dock. So before we had slips and they didn't work too well, so now you just kind of pull in, and let's see if I got a picture of it.
So just a question, is $376 a month now? We're not charging by the foot, or we just charging by the slip, or?
So for $376 is what we're doing now.
And that's
And-
water and electricity and,
Right. So that's and that's a little low. We don't do it
Yes, it is.
by foot. $450. I talked to some other marinas, and most of them do by foot, but I found one that does like we do by month. $450 is, and they do it. And I'm working with the engineer on this too. Is, hey, this slip will accommodate a 40-foot vessel, and
that's what
I
you
don't-
pay for, that's right.
that's what you.
Anywhere
I
in
don't care if
town,
you
they
got
charge
a
by the
10-foot
foot.
vessel or
What's the
Sell by the
price?
foot, charge by the foot.
right.
What's
So-
the price of the foot in other marinas? Average.
So I got a little link up here for you. If it works, might have to hit control.
I mean, I'm not trying to, make it hard for people, but I mean, that's a business you're running. Everybody has to pay a business location.
Right.
And that's a great.
So Other marinas, you know, you got $1.25, $1.55. You're at Blackwell Point, Moorhead, $1.50, $2.
And does that include water and sewer? I mean, water and electric?
Some of them do, some of them don't. Most of them do include all the amenities. If you click on them and go through, you find out what's included. So
Is that per day or for the month?
that is per day.
So it's what,
$1.25,
25 is what times 40 is $50, right?
right, per day
100 a month?
is what you would pay. So ours is, I mean, if you do the math, what I'm looking at going to for the town is if we went to a 6.2 increase would get us $400 a month. We do quarterly, and then you back that into like a out of 30 days, that's $13 a day. So if you got a 13-foot slip or 13-foot boat, you're paying a dollar a foot. So most ours are more closer to around 40 feet's our average.
So that's
So
30
it's
cents a foot.
32, 33 cents a foot is what they're paying.
Bargain.
It was
So
less than that.
This is a conversation that is, the mayor and I are on the Harbor Commission, is not comfortable to have, so I don't typically have it because they shouldn't have that conversation. But
So what are you saying? What do you mean?
For this year, I'd
No,
like,
what are you saying about the commission, why you shouldn't have that conversation?
well, they're all going to say that the rates are too
And
high.
and why? I know the
Because they're-
answer, I just
they're-
want you to tell me.
They're paying, the Harbor Commission are the boat
Are the
captains.
people who are paying the rent, so
But-
I ain't trying to be rude, God, I love everybody out there, but should they vote on something that affects them monetarily?
And we actually, the mayor and I talked about that at the last meeting, not that specifically, but the whole construction of the Harbor Commission is we want to do a spring and fall boat captain meeting, and then maybe have a couple other meetings throughout the year where they can look at some other marina or Myrtle Grove Sound issues, not marina issues, and maybe make some recommendations on that. Because right now we have the Harbor Commission and it's a select few of the boat captains, and some of the other boat captains are feeling slighted because they're not on that committee and they don't get the information. So why don't we just have that joint?
You mean a meeting of all the boat captains? I agree 100%, but I don't agree that, just like us, we can't vote on anything that affects us monetarily, and I don't think they should be able to vote on it.
Right,
Recommendations only, Ed. And that's
right.
that's the message. Yeah, and we were there. It was non-contentious 2 weeks ago.
Yes. They,
Top rate stuff.
this is the type of stuff that the mayor and I presented to them at the last meeting, and I think would be good to have the boat captain's input on. And this was one of the folks in Oceana brought to us, and we've been working with the state on. We'll be bringing this to you at your next meeting. It is an increase in our no wake zone area. So all the hashed area would be no wake zone. Right now, this line down here at the bottom, I'm following my cursor, everything past that line is no wake zone. But we're having a lot of issues with people impacting the dock over here at Joiner Marina and the neighborhood over here. So if we do this, and it'll be a resolution at your next meeting, we will have to fund this going in. And I did put some money in the budget, under the marina budget, to fund a couple of piles for signs and a few buoys out there. And after we fund it, we'd have to maintain it. And we do have to maintain the no wake zone signs in Myrtle Grove Sound, because at one time, council adopted a resolution saying we would. And we asked that question, Mayor and I asked about the signage out there today, and the boat captains or Harbor Commission was, yeah, it's all looking good. So, but we do regularly monitor that. I know we had to replace some after Florence, so.
A lot of that's contingent upon Fish and Wildlife, though, enforcing that, correct?
Yes. Now, all this outside our town limits, they would have to enforce. We had legislation, adopt a special legislation 2012, 13, somewhere around there, where we have enabling authority to enforce the no-wake zone in our area. So we have a lot of enforcement authorities in everywhere from this line going south. So that we wanted that for several reasons. Big part of it was the mooring field.
Before you go any further, can I ask you another question? I was noticing that you had seasonal.
Oh yeah, let me go back.
I want to
to
know
that.
about that seasonal. Why is it seasonal and not year-round?
Let me go back to that. I had that. Can't remember where I had that.
Right there.
Is it on this one?
Yeah, it says 450 loaded.
It says June to September. Why are we running the slip seasonal?
So, thank you for bringing that up. That is something that I want to talk about. So the west side is going to be available very, very soon. As soon as we get those transition plates, like I said, we want to go ahead and get them filled. Those I'd like to, and I've already talked to a few of the folks that are interested, and I asked them about 450 because that is the low end of what you would charge for that side slip is what I'm finding. And they're like, yes, we just want to get in there, 450, great. When do I write the check? I'd like to get them in at a higher rate because we're not going to have them all year. I don't anticipate. We're going to do that June 15th through September 15th license agreement with them. And then after that, we may be ready, depending on what happens with FEMA, we may be ready to start construction and have to tell them they have to go away.
You're saying it's because you're not ready and you need to work on it, but it's going to be a year-round slip.
He's talking about you may need to do work on the other side.
If
Right.
we
I see
we
what
may
you're saying.
have
You
to
might need
kick
to
them
move.
out after September 15th, they may have to go away, and I want to make that very clear to them. You know, after September 5th, we might go to month if we're not under
That's fair.
construction.
But you expect it to be a year-round slip after everything's done.
Oh, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely,
Back to the norm.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, once we get
That's smart.
everything,
What you're doing is smart. That makes sense.
right.
You said currently you have people that you could put in there now, but if we were to advertise, it would take you longer to fill those slips.
Well, if we advertise, we'd want to give them, you know, maybe a week or two to, we'd have to put the ads out. We could do one in the paper or just on Facebook, website, that type of thing, and get notification out and then start getting applications in. So yeah, I could do that as well.
And that would be keeping the spirit of the existing resolution today without modifications.
Right, right. I could definitely do that and hold off on putting people in there, but I was looking at moving faster. I don't have to because it's already June 15th.
Is that what you recommend? Is don't do the ad and just fill the slips?
That's what I was going to do, just so we could go ahead and get them in.
Clarity as to
Yeah.
current resolution.
That would get us boats in slips and revenue generated a little bit quicker, whereas an advertisement is probably going to be July at the earliest before I can get anybody in there. It might be harder because, you know, now they only got a portion of the season. I think I can fill them.
Just talk with Noel and whatever she's happy with, I think we'd be happy
Yeah.
with.
Right.
You know.
Sure.
And you know what? That'll give you a chance to see who you like, you know, or who's going to, you know, be good in the slips too.
Right.
Just for short term.
Right, short term. So
I see where you're going, Ed. I think following the resolution at this point in time, unless there's some overly good reason.
I'd say
Well, I
fill
think
them.
since you're only gonna fill them potentially until September, it makes sense to just fill them as fast as we can.
I agree.
okay.
To get that income.
And then
I mean, we want commerce in there, and that's what we're trying to bring. More than the income is the commerce to the town.
And it's a safety and security thing too. Is once we open that area up, I don't want those slips just sitting there empty.
No.
And then
That's right, because it don't look good.
yeah,
That's right.
and it's other people are going. It's going to be a problem for a police department. There's always going to be over there. We don't-
Somebody's,
Okay, there's your head nod.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
so-
think that might be. Oh, I didn't talk about Larry Denning. A lot of you know Larry Denning, who is been around Carolina Beach for a long time, and he's a really good fellow. I've known him for a long time, and he is a contract employee. We've contracted him. He'll have he's got a little boat down right by the day boat slips at the town marina, and he's been going out for the last couple months and managing that mooring field. So it's been definitely a change if you look at all the boater sites of how much they now have enjoyed coming to Carolina Beach versus before it was just either me or Sheila, and sometimes Debbie going on Dockwood and approving them sight unseen. A lot of times they get out there and there's somebody in their spot. Larry helps make sure that doesn't happen. He has a thoughtful conversation with those folks that shouldn't be there, and that's the end of it. After that, he goes back and picks up a police officer.
And we're all laughing because we have heard no problems, so we can only assume he's doing an awesome job.
Yeah.
We would know if he wasn't.
Thoughtful conversation, if you know Larry.
I don't know him, but I'm assuming he's doing an awesome job.
Yeah, he's
Larry, he's pretty funny.
a good guy.
Thoughtful conversation.
Just like Steve's.
He had a saved round. Months ago, we had Kevin, a resident, come in here and asking about the abandoned boat ordinance, which is somewhat tied to the marina. Should a boat be at the transient slip longer than a certain period of time?
Thank you, yes.
Has Noel had a chance to take a look at that ordinance, maybe look at
I'm
the gaps?
Almost
Back
positive
to us.
we haven't delved into that yet. I did reach out to him, and I gave him the same information that I told the Harbor Commission. I asked the Harbor Commission if they would collect all their, I gave them all a copy of our current code, told them what council's interests were, and said, bring me back comments by the end of June. And I told him the same thing, as I'm looking at the end of June. I'm hoping between now and the end of June, when I get those comments back, if I get any from anybody, then we can sit down with Noel and finalize a draft and bring that back to you. But yeah, there are several things that I'm thinking about including as, and one of them is going to be that how we do the cost. You know, there might be a certain block of slips that are going to be X amount, where another block will be a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on what size vessel we can accommodate in those slips. You may or may not know the winners have reduced their number of head boats down there, and so that's going to open up for some competition to come in. So there'll be a changing dynamic down there, but we are keeping 3 slips open for head boats as the current design. So those cost a little bit more, and I think we could probably potentially do some other stages of what the larger, medium size, smaller, or we could go to cost per foot. So we're going to still look. I'll be looking at that with the engineer, and then some of the enforcement stuff with Noel.
Cool.
So maybe see something in July for that abandoned boat ordinance, perhaps.
At the earliest, July. If I get everything back in June, and I can go ahead and start working on it with Noel, then maybe we could get something. And I'm meeting with her today at 1:30, so we'll see if we can.
We could push that for that workshop in July. That'd be awesome.
Okay.
Makes sense.
I think I'm up for the next one too. So the next one is the joint land use study update. And really the purpose and goal, this is what is in the plan as purpose and goal, but when I read this, I think about Carolina Beach, because where we've been with Matsu, we've had a 50-year relationship with them, and we've had inspections that were continuing to go on. And through those inspections, we had agreements, and they were verbal agreements. So we didn't do the right thing, and they didn't do the right thing by amending our license agreements. And it got us in a position in 2012, 2013, where they came over and had some other folks look at the site along with the inspector that had been coming here for years and said, this is not consistent with your license agreement. And I went back and looked at what we tried to do in 2012 and 2013. Steve was here then. And we said, we kept trying to reel it back in a little bit, and they're like, no, everything. Everything has to be consistent. And it took us a while to gather that and say, okay, we got to get back to ground zero. And we've done that. And now we're like, well, okay, how do we, because obviously the way we were doing it wasn't the right way, and the way they were doing it wasn't the right way. What is the right way? So that's what we were hoping to get out of a joint land use study. We made a lot of progress. This is a timeline of the meetings that we've had, 2018, 2019. And you see down here, I got a slide at the end that will give some more details. But we're coming up on the very last meeting, 2 public meetings, June 24th and 25th. So this slide it gives a good overview of the Pleasure Island ESCZ. And the ESCZ is the Explosive Safety Clear Zone. That's what we typically call the buffer zone. So if you see that ESCZ, Explosive Safety Clear Zone, that's that green area. I think it's interesting. I didn't know this before we started, that there's no actual storage. There's just staging of ammunitions going through Matsu. Let's see. Oh, wait. No, that's what I wanted. This slide, I thought it was interesting too. It just shows some of the population trends. I think they're low. I think 2020 we're going to see the numbers significantly higher than what they've been shown to grow. I looked at, they also had a slide showing our number of housing units, which was based on census data. And if you look at what we actually did, we're actually quite a bit higher than what the census has shown. So I think once they do a thorough census in 2020, we're going to see these numbers quite a bit higher, just what I'm anticipating. So calculations of these buffer zones, or that's not the right word, but we'll go with that for now, is explosive safety, quantity, distance. They look at how much the net explosive weight and then the distance. And the two that we're looking at, and this is important, is the inhabited building district, the IBD is what you'll hear referred to, and the K88. Those are the two that we're impacted by, and you really want to remember, the inhabited building district and K88. So if you look at this slide, it shows you that here's the K88 line. This is the one I said it was important. All of Carolina Beach is in the K88. And if you look at the IBD, I know it's probably hard to see. There's the Curie Beach line. This is the buffer zone. So this is all buffer zone that's outside of the IBD. That's extremely important. The K88 is a zone that is no different under Army rules than where we're standing right now. The only difference is we don't own that property and they do. So if you go to the Army's rules and you look at how do they approve things in that inhabited building I said districts, I think it's distance, the IBD. There is a manual, and it's mostly for a Army facility, and it says, okay, if you want to do a recreation use, you can do certain types of recreation uses, and here's the list. If you want to do a utility, public works type use, there are allowances, and that's where that manual is written. It wasn't really written for a municipality like Carolina Beach. It was for those on-site Army facilities. But that's all within the IBD. There is nothing for the K88, all that buffer zone outside. So right now, the IBD is, there's a little bit of the state park and there's a little bit of our wastewater treatment plant. Outside of that, all this land is almost everything in Carolina Beach on the east side of Dow Road, and a big chunk of the state park and property on the west side of Dow Road is regulated by the Army, no different than they don't have any additional regulations. I think this is one thing that Mayor and I talked to them about, and the Cape Fear Council of Government is compatible use easements. This is something where I think council could maybe do some lobbying in the future or look at, and staff as well. This is property that is privately owned or owned by municipalities, and it has easements that restrict what can be done there. So there's no reason why this K88 buffer zone couldn't be given to the town and have compatible use easements over it, and we manage it with those easements. The problem we're having now is there is no reason for the Army to come back in this buffer zone outside the IBD and tell us anything but yes. But there's also no reason for them to tell us anything but no. And it typically will go to the command at Matsu, and then there's a higher level command that's going to be looking at it. And when they're looking at it, what incentive do they have to say yes? And that's where we struggle.
70 acres of private property, correct? Somewhere in that neighborhood?
Yes,
In
sir.
that buffer zone, okay.
This was a compelling slide. The mayor asked some questions about it. I thought was interesting when we were at the last meeting. Is the Dow Road within the IBD is approaching traffic volume threshold. So there could be, they're going to be looking at that when they're bringing ammunition up the Cape Fear River, and there could be some restrictions on how they're transporting ammunitions based on holidays and different events. And we don't know if that will ever impact Pleasure Island and the use of Dow Road, but it potentially could years and years in the future. So.
DOT likes to keep traffic moving.
52 primary recommendations. So the joint land use study has 5 categories, and the last one was specific to us, but the first one is also, well, all of them are important to us. I highlighted some of the notable recommendations. And establish an enduring regional organization was one of them. So having a group that continues to meet, because we didn't answer that question. We got our request in the joint land use study, but they didn't answer that question of what is that final process for getting approval for our request. So if we're outside the IBD and we want something, what's that process for approval? What's going to make you say yes or no? The reason we didn't get that is they don't know that answer. And so we want to continue having a committee and meeting with them even after this is done. And there's actually some grant funds that the COG is looking at to help put that in place. Command briefings for new elected officials was in there. I thought that was important. If you look at Matsu on the internet, if you type it in, you'll get the Cape Fear Council of Government's website where we've been posting the joint land use study, and that's pretty much it. They're not out there on the web. There's not a lot posted, so that's one of their incentives is they want to do that and get some information out there for public education. This is one thing that participation on steering advisory committees, we have, Jeremy's done a good job trying to get those folks involved in our land use plan update, and they want to be, or want to be involved in any kind of new planning strategies that we have, long-range planning strategies. So that was a positive, I think, to have them at the table. This one, I think, was just interesting. I wanted to put it in there, and although they're saying, hey, this is 50 feet, anything over 50 feet needs a special use permit and should get special consideration. The real issue here is if you're in the K88, which we all are, in Carolina Beach, then there should be shatterproof glass if you're over 50 feet. They really want to have that as a recommendation. We can't make that call at the building code level because the building inspector can only enforce minimal building code. But we would need to look at options for how we potentially could make that call, and I think they put special use permit in there as an option, but I think that's something that we're going to have to go back and work with Noel on. I don't think it has to be a special use permit. It just has to be something we look at as how can we enforce that regulation. Even if it's a special use permit, that doesn't mean you can tell them they have to do it. So it might be special legislation that they have to do for that. This one I thought was interesting too, which is good they have it in the plan because maybe that's helps with funding. A lot of times if you have it in a long-range plan, but everybody knows Snows Cut Bridge is great that we have it, but it doesn't have any pedestrian bicycle facilities. So they're promoting that in the plan.
They're promoting what?
Expanding, replacing the existing Snows Cut Bridge with a wider cross-section inbound and outbound that could accommodate bicycle.
Are they
pedestrian
paying
traffic.
for it, or?
Well, I think the
Just one-
fact that the Army is saying
They
yes.
can get somebody to give us some money, that's awesome.
Right, right.
It's not our
Ed,
bridge.
that's exactly what the Office of Economic Activity, which commissions these joint land use studies in the first place, is for. They have money to adopt recommendations. That-
Okay, so we spent a year working with NCDOT trying to get a bike trail, a bike lane across the bridge. We looked at 5 or 6, Tom, do you remember, 5 or 6 different designs that included a center island. We talked about narrowing the gap. We talked about taking out the center island. We talked about making one side wider than the other. And DOT came back and said structurally, that bridge is engineered for a certain load, and you can't shift the vehicle traffic one direction or another. According to DOT, the only way to do anything different on that bridge is replace the whole bridge.
Yeah.
Okay, we pushed hard. We had Karen down here.
Yeah, I wouldn't hear them, but I
We,
didn't know
we,
that.
ha- oh yeah, we spent a lot of time pushing hard to try and get staff members. Jerry and Brian, remember? We looked at several different designs. We looked at, cantilevers. We looked at taking out that concrete in the center, shifting lanes, narrowing lanes. Engineering wise, the way it's engineered, they said you can't shift traffic on the bridge.
I don't necessarily disagree with the thought that it would be nice to have a walk lane or maybe something built over for bicycles or whatever, but that's a conversation Matsu needs to have with DOT, not us. That's
Especially
what I
if they're,
think.
especially if they're concerned about egress during a, storm or
Right.
some, that's.
And I get it, makes sense.
I think Councilman Shuttleworth's right. I remember that too. It was very difficult, but the fact that they were willing to look at it and maybe champion some type of effort,
Great.
I think would be phenomenal. So, specific title, location, and nature of uses. So this is, hey, yes, we need to, these are the Pleasure Island specific recommendations, and this is Matsu recognizing that they need to continue to work with us on that ESCZ or buffer zone, IBD or outside the IBD in the K88. What and how are they going to permit us to do in those zones, areas through a license agreement or through easements or however it's going to work? this is really affecting them as much as it affects us because it's more time and work for them to have these shorter license agreements. So they want to go to longer license agreements, which would be fantastic for us. And storm drainage issues, I thought was great that they were willing to put that in there. That's something we're interested in very much as a community. So that they support using their property to help us with storm drainage.
And speaking of the license agreements, last year when we started talking about possibly redoing a license for 3 to 5 years for the spoils, where are we at in that conversation?
We've given them a proposal for the 5 years and asked them if they would sit down and go through it with us. There's a lot of details I'm guessing they want, but I haven't got that meeting set up where they're willing to sit down with us and say, yeah, this is what we need, or this is what we're amenable to. I think if we had that 5 years, I think after talking to our utilities department and folks at the wastewater treatment plant, that we can strategically use every bit of that dirt on site. Might be a little bit of it that goes away. It's actually really good soil. I know when we tested it, we went pretty deep down and there was some arsenic in the deeper soils, but the soil that is out there that on the site now is great quality, and there's a lot of things that can, and it's been retested, and there's a lot of things we can use it for.
When was the last time you followed up with them?
I think last week.
The reason I asked this is I know originally we were hoping that we could have everything in play by this off season, which is when we wanted to go back to the lake. So if it's any way that we can get on top of that, I know it's something that the residents are highly speaking of and something we were looking into because that off season is that window, the time frame.
We will push for that meeting. I think we need to have it, and Mayor and I met the new representative, Fahey.
Public Works, Joe
Fahey.
Fahey. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
That is taking that position. So they've been kind of in a transition role with Malcolm Charles is the fellow that we've been working with, and he's going back to his job. So we struggle a little bit because they are short-staffed and transitioning. All the civilians that we dealt with either left or moved into different roles.
Okay.
So they're all learning their new roles.
So Ed, refresh my memory. Did we get a letter out last week?
Yes, there's
Okay,
a letter
and-
out, and
Ultimately, does that go from Malcolm then down to Savannah?
it went to Malcolm and John Manning.
Right.
So John Manning would review that with.
He's the real estate guy.
Right.
Right.
So
And they're gonna make a recommendation to the colonel, and they'll make, the civilian side will make a recommendation to the military side. Ultimately, the decision, our experience has been those decisions all come out of Savannah. And they're gonna push the colonel one direction or the other. The colonel will have some input, but ultimately, so, is John Manning down in Savannah, or is he up here?
he is at the Wilmington Army Corps office, and the Savannah representative was here a week or two ago, and that position's changing as well. So we're getting a new rep there, and she's only been our rep for, I don't know, maybe 6 months. So she's been great to work with, but we are getting a new person in that rep role as well. So.
That was it with the joint land use study. That was the only outstanding thing as it applies to all the communities, of the site license and the terms of the site license. And where the approval lies, which when I spoke informal comms only with Colonel Carlisle last week, there was some, I won't say frustration, but what approvals can she make at her level? You know, otherwise why have a commander there in the first place? But,
Right.
you know, but that's when we need the Cape Fear Council of Governments on board with, because it's their joint land use study, and if they can help us accelerate particularly our license, the terms of our license, all the better. Like,
And
like
Alan
this week.
Serkin, Alan Serkin has been the champion for this this effort, facilitator. He's been the planner for years over there, and he's taking over as the head of the COG when Chris May retires, I think in August. So it won't be too long before his retirement comes up. So, and Mayor's right, Alan is very a big proponent of the joint land use study and is appears to be very dedicated to help us get some additional resources for implementation. Mayor and I actually came early to the meeting, our last meeting, and wanted to add a recommendation. So this is the one that we added in, was we wanted to make sure that there was this long-standing committee that could address, because we didn't get the answer. The whole reason we wanted a joint land use study was we wanted that question answered that Steve's describing, is what is that process, and who's going to say, what's going to give us a yes, and what we want to know if we can submit this to you, that you're going to tell us yes or no. And we didn't get those answers. But they are dedicated to continuing to move that forward. Things at the Army are always changing of how they're reviewing this. So that committee and long-standing communication is something that we have to have. So.
Ed, wait, just as a follow-up to Joe Dan's question on the letter that went out, the other part of that, at some point is, can we run a parallel track on reviewing and validating the existing permits in a process that will take the positive assumption that the Army says we can move the dirt? So can we run a parallel track on validating the permits and what it would take to get a bid out so that we can figure out how to select a contractor to do that work this fall?
That we're ready to rock
After
and
the
roll.
season. So, I mean, if you can run a parallel track, you know, then once we get done arm wrestling with the Army over putting the dirt there, we'll be ready to hit the ground running.
And Steve and I have talked a little bit about this, so we could look at that. I can, we do have our project manager, Ben Meister, over in operations, and we could get him to start checking on make sure everything's in line and get some meetings set up for, to make sure that
It's
We are
very
where we need-
beneficial if we start doing that process now, because if they say yes, and that day, boom, start running.
Yeah, there's nothing preventing the town from doing it anyway.
Yeah.
we can always go back and make sure there's no permitting issues there, and then, you know, we'd have to go through doing some updates to the plans and bidding everything out, so. But yeah, we can go ahead and start getting that going. This is the additional detail I wanted to give you and put out there for the upcoming meetings. I haven't been to the new Curie Beach Town Hall, so I'm kind of excited to see that on June 24th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And then it will be probably different folks, probably some of the same folks, but it's basically to pass the same information at the Southport Community Center on the following day. So you can welcome to attend both. This is for everybody, but if you attend one, you should get this general same information depending on who's there asking what questions. And I did mention that there is not a lot of places on the internet to see things about Matsu. This is where you go, capefaircog.org/Sunny Point. Basically, if you type in Matsu in your search engine, that's probably all that's going to come up is the Cape Fear Council of Government. So it's pretty easy to find, and it gives you all the detail of what we've been working on for the last couple of years with the joint land use study committees. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Ed.
Mayor, Council,
Okay.
good morning. All right, let's jump in. We have preliminary results from the pay study. I sent you an email highlighting that it was eye-opening. I propose another meeting, potentially June 3rd, that Monday, to review our budget in concert with the pay study. The initial results were upwards of $1 million to bridge the gap with what the consultant found. We obviously cannot raise taxes or do anything to meet that need, so I went back and asked the consultant to give us some other solutions, some phased approaches. He's in the process of doing that. He submitted one solution, but I still need to touch base with him, and Holly and I need to go back and revisit that, and we'd like the chance to hammer that out this week to consult with you.
Prior to that meeting, do you want to share that report with us, or do we want to wait and look at it with you and then?
I think it's probably in the interest of efficiency, better for us to have a streamlined solution with a consultant, so we're not wasting your time, sir.
Okay.
But I'm happy to give you that information for you to have it to look at for background, and I can forward that to you later on today. The last meeting, we spoke about contingency funds. And as you all may know by now, we had an incident at the beach, Freeman Park, where a police truck caught on fire. And contrary to some of the chatter and the rumors, we do not in the town light our trucks on fire to get new trucks. Thankfully, no one was injured. But contingency is really important to think about because it is not just the vehicle that we need to replace. As Chief's mentioned before, there's striping packages, there's gear in the specialized equipment in the trucks. In this instance, weapons and the like. So it takes money. And our plan of attack to get the town to where it needs to be to have this vehicle is to work with our insurance carrier and figure out what happened. Work with our insurance carrier to figure out how much we can get, and we'll revisit this and come back to you. Generally, though, we've got insurance, last resort measure. We'll look at fund balance. We'll also look at grants, and going forward, we will attempt to have a 10% contingency in contracts so that we can not have to come back to council and dip into our general fund.
Sorry, I just thought about something. So we are getting a new truck.
Well, we will look to the insurance.
And I was going to ask you, does the insurance cover the equipment that's inside the truck? Is it insured for that?
We'll have to look at that, ma'am. I
Okay.
don't have the answer,
Okay.
but I'll get back to you.
Kim's shaking her head yes.
Yes? Okay. Well, that's good.
That would be helpful,
I know there's a lot of equipment in there that's additional.
yeah.
All right. There was some confusion about the fund balance and the 8% versus the 30% versus the 50%. What does it all mean? How do we get there? There are various components to the fund balance, and some of this I'm figuring out now with the help of staff. I invite you to look at the fund balance, the first red arrow. The fund balance is composed of various pots of money. We have restricted, assigned, and unassigned. The slide on the left with the 5 components of fund balance comes from the North Carolina School of Government, and it speaks to the degrees of spendability. The lower down the numbers are presented in our balance sheet, the easier those funds are to spend. So the unassigned funds we can spend freely. Assigned, for capital projects and the like, we can't spend it as freely because those are allocated for those projects. Committed funds, restricted funds, and we've got the state stabilization by state statute. And you'll see here that for last year, that was approximately $1.3 million. What does that mean? How does that play into our 8%? So after chatting with Debbie this week and last week, that 8% that we're looking to get is state mandated. On top of that 8%, we have liabilities that are added in there. So by default, we have to have 8%, and that's where that money is calculated. Last week I showed you a cool chart that showed you the 8%, 30%, and 50% mark.
All right, let me just make sure I understand that, Lucky. Are you saying that stabilization by state statute is 1.2 is the 8%?
Yes,
Yeah.
and Debbie can,
Is that right?
Yes, sir, it's that, and then where it has your liabilities, the $800,000 in liabilities, that number is added in there as well.
When you say added in, it's added on top of the 1.2?
That's included in that $1.2 million at the
Right,
top.
right.
So they take the eight, because we had to, those were expenses from the previous fiscal year, which are actually coming out of your cash.
Right.
So it was saying that was reserved to pay that debt.
so two complicating factors on this. One is the way this works, you can see on the left, the white box, the components and the degrees of spendability. So in order for us to touch that money, we have to spend our other funds first. It's kind of like in the gas tank. You spend all of your money first, and then when that light goes off, that's your reserve amount. So the restricted by state statute, the stabilization fund. I'll chat to it in a second, but those are for emergencies,
That's right.
and I'll get to that. But that's point number one. The confusing part, though, is when I showed you the chart with the 8%, the 30, and the 50, that didn't account for this. It didn't account for that 8% off the top that we're required to have. So that's
Well, the one,
Lucky, that's okay, because that's still, when we ask for a 50% fund balance, we're including that 8%. We acknowledge the state requires the 8%. 10, 15 years ago, council, maybe longer, council came out and said, as a community, we'd like to strive for a 50% fund balance, inclusive of that 8.
So I wasn't counting this restricted by state stabilization
but
grant. so
Lucky,
that's
the
what-
question to what Steve's saying, when we were audited by the LGC last year, we were said to have a 21% fund balance, which didn't include the 8.
Yes, it did.
Yes, it always.
They always include the 8%. Forget the 8%. The 8% is a state mandated.
It's
and
just a
figure-
minimum.
It's a figure that they put out there, but it's always included in our fund balance.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I thought, but what's the 21% based on
Maybe it'll be easier for me to point here.
when you're projecting a 30 at the end of the year?
So our total fund balance from last year was $6 million. Total fund balance, including all these different
Right.
pots of money.
And that's the percentage fund balance that we have in the past attempted to get to 50%.
But the unassigned amount, the amount that we can spend freely is 3.1 from last year.
Understand, but that
That doesn't include this amount.
That's right, but what, I believe, Tom, jump in here, but I believe
Yeah.
what the community has always looked at is that total fund balance. And we have asked that to be at 50%. We understand as a community, the state requires 8, which is included in there.
Correct.
Then we have other inclusions in there that we have already pre-committed out of that fund balance, the storm damage prevention. Then you have the unassigned stuff.
Right.
Part of that unassigned was money that we had accumulated over the years out of Freeman Park excess or additional revenues, and we put that into the fund balance, and we as a council did a soft earmark on that to say that that was for sand fund. There are no requirements that that be used for sand fund. One council cannot handcuff a future council on how to spend money. The only ones that can do that are the state, and the state does that with the stabilization fund, the Powell bill,
Right.
and the grant funds. The rest of that is all fungible, we get to decide.
Right.
We as a council have set aside, and no one's interrupted it, a savings account for sand beach nourishment. If we get in a jam and we need to spend it on something else, we can do that. We can't get below the 8%.
Yeah, I get that. My only question to Deb was it reflected in the 21% fund balance? And if the answer is yes on the LGC letter, I'm good. Then I understand it.
The
I'm
20
going back to the LGC audit
Right.
letter. I got letter answer.
Yeah, and the LGC came in with a little bit higher than the 21. The 21 is that 3.1 million that we
Okay.
were saying was
I'm just trying to make
unassigned.
sense of the numbers.
Right.
Got it.
So the local government commission was actually giving us, saying that we could spend everything except for that stabilization fund. They were kind of not including that in their total at the time, because they're saying, we don't want you touching that. So that's what they were looking
Right,
at, as
right.
everything
I know
else is
that's
really.
Well, and that's the minimum. We're not supposed to go below that.
Right, right. So they were looking at everything but that, saying, okay, if you take all of these numbers together, you're not at the same place that your peer group is located. You're
Right.
falling below. So that's what they were looking at. So
And And Steve, I just wanted to add something that you said, because you are correct that we can't handcuff future councils for that particular money that we've decided that's what we want to spend it on. At the same time, we as a present council could change it. I mean, the same thing as a future could, we could. So it's something that a decision was made, that's what we want to collect the money for, but we can at any time change that. It's not mandated by the state, so therefore we have control over it.
Okay.
Are there any other
That
questions
was
on this?
I answered my one question. Thanks, Deb, I got it now.
And again, Deb, I just want to make sure I understand, when we talk about a fund balance, it is a snapshot at a period of time when the auditors come and close out our books.
Right.
Correct.
And that fund balance fluctuates all year long. We don't have multiple savings accounts. We have one bank account. Everything goes in there. And at some snapshot during the year, we could be below that because we haven't received our property tax revenue or we haven't received other revenues. So the fund balance number is just a snapshot right there when the
Yeah.
auditors come in.
At that time.
At that time.
That's the
It could
official,
go up
yeah.
and down from there, but
Right.
that's what we have to use
So-
our benchmark.
And it's my understanding that
These
we,
numbers are from June 30th?
this is from last year,
Okay,
yes,
so
ma'am.
what
Right,
is it
that,
now?
that's exactly right. That's the snapshot, when the auditors come in, you close the books at the end of the fiscal
That's-
year.
Right.
And then by the end of August, they come back and say, okay, here's your audited financials, here's what you closed out the year, and here's what you had.
And it's my understanding that when we talk about fund balance, we're not talking about the total fund balance, because that includes a lot of restricted and assigned funds. What that's talking about is our freely available money. I mentioned this to the mayor. When we're thinking about fund balance, if we've got $100 in our wallet, and we know on Friday we need $20 for beer, hypothetically, I know not everyone drinks beer, but hypothetically, we need that $20 for beer or lemonade or whatever the case is on Friday afternoon. We're going to put that $20 in our back pocket, which means in our wallet, we've got $80 to spend. In reality, we do have $100 on our person, yes. But our available money to spend is that $80 in our wallet, because we're saving that 20. So all of these other non-spendable, restricted, committed, and assigned, that's money in our back pocket. We're not spending that. We're not counting that. We're only counting the money that we have available.
So I guess this is all well and good, but we're 30 days from June 30th,
Sure.
2019, so that's what I want to see.
Sure, yes, ma'am. A quick highlight on the the stabilization. How does that work? I alluded to the emergency before. Looking at the savings reserve, looking for legislative intent from the state. They've got from the North Carolina Emergency Management Act is how they define emergency. And you could see the bottom paragraph here, all of the things that we could potentially use that state stabilization funding for.
Which for us is primarily a hurricane. Thank
Right.
goodness we're not having other riots, but, I mean,
You're
that's,
Right.
So moving on to our funding situation, the last presentation, I also mentioned FEMA and mentioned that we were close to that 30% mark than we realized. But it was important to highlight where we are with our grant progress so far. This year, can I get back here? Previous. Yeah, press escape. This year, hopefully this, oh, okay. We're expected to receive, or we have received reimbursements to date for the Island Greenway and Cape Fear, close to $900,000. Within the next 30 days, we will receive from all of the grants, including water and sewer grants, another $500,000.
okay, but the water and sewer grants, are those going into the general fund or are those going into the
Those are
utility
enterprise fund. Just
Enterprise
the top two are approximately $300,000 is remaining to go to the
General
general
fund.
fund.
Okay, great, perfect.
In addition, our strategy is to look at grants. So we mentioned the lake dredge and the other projects that we have. We will look into the Golden Leaf program, which they were told have available funds. And we looked at just different municipalities, and they've granted upwards of $900,000 or $800,000 for various projects, and we're looking to secure some of that. So, be it for a fire engine to reduce our liabilities next year, or lake dredge, we will actively look at this to reduce our costs. All right. Recommended budget savings. The last presentation, I mentioned that we had upwards of $400,000 that could potentially go back to the,
Lucky, question for you.
yes, sir.
That 500,000 is gonna kick back in. Our general fund is 7.5. The math is correct, that's what, 8%?
Say that one more time.
Go that again?
The general fund currently is 7.5 right now, right?
No, it's higher than that.
The general fund,
Total. What's total in there?
The fund balance?
What percentage is I'm getting at? What percentage do you think that 500,000 is gonna kick it up to? 2%?
Oh, at-
3%?
yeah,
On
so-
top.
well,
I defer to Deb.
Deb, would that
Typically,
be
you get-
projecting 30 June 2019 on that date? Or at the end of the fiscal year?
Are
What
you
Joe
talking-
Dan's question is a
What
snapshot in time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about the grants.
Yeah, that 500,000 is gonna kick back in. Roughly, what percentage will that boost us up?
so Debbie, what he's asking is, what's your best guess of what our fund balance percentage would be at the end of June when we add that 500,000 back in? Will that 500 raise it 1%, 2%, from 20 to 22, from 21 to
300,000.
23, 28 to 30?
Well,
What do you
Jerry's
think?
currently working with DOT, trying to get that ironed out on the final cost, so
Yeah, let's just say it's $500,000. So what is your, I mean, the question everyone has is, what's your best guess of what our fund balance will be at the end of this year, dollar-wise? Best guess. We're not gonna hold you to it. Go low.
yeah, right now it's close to 24%. Not, I don't
Okay,
have
20,
that dollar.
24% of the 18-19 budget?
Yeah, whatever year we're in, what year we're in,
It'd be the
No,
1920, the 20%
18.
of the 15+ million we need for the 1920 budget.
The bottom line of the grants is that it won't get us to that 30% mark. I think right now we're hovering about the 24%, 25 potentially at the extremely conservative amount. This money, according to the calculations we ran earlier this morning, will put us on the conservative side because we're not allocating for all the parking that we will receive in the future year because we're going to have parking start a month earlier in March, which should generate approximately $90,000. So right now, on a conservative basis, let's say we're at 25% with this money coming in.
And you're saying that that's the unrestricted fund balance?
Unrestricted fund balance.
Including, exclusive of the 8% from the state?
Yes, sir.
Boy, I gotta tell you guys, that's totally different than the way I've understood it for 8 years. My understanding was the state, they include the 8%, but it's an aggregate total of our fund balance. You would add the 1.2 in there. I mean, I thought, Debbie, when the LGC sent that letter last year, it included every penny that was in there. They did identify restricted amounts, like the Powell bill, but it included our sand fund, and it included the state mandated 8%. We weren't at 24 plus 8. We were at 22 total, or whatever that letter said we were at. That included the 8%. I'm pretty sure you go back and look, because you and Noel wrote those letters to the state twice.
And I'll go back
Can
and-
you go back to that slide, show Steve, there's separate line items with the 1.2 constrained and the 3.1 unconstrained.
Right, and so what you're quoting is an unrestricted fund balance, and I thought the state gave us a total aggregate number.
I have to go back and pull the
I
letter.
mean, I'm
that
just,
year.
that was.
And so
my
part of the
understanding.
confusion, and I understand the confusion, because when I went back to look at the state stabilization fund, I'm like, well, how is this used? When can we use it? Do we have to use up all of our unassigned before we can tap into that?
But it's not really tapping into it, Lucky, and I guess that's where
It's
we
all
need to
one
go back.
number,
It's
right?
all in one bank account. What the state has said is municipalities across the state cannot have less than 8% in their reserve account, period. We as a community have said we want more than that, and that includes the 8%. So, they got nervous with us. The reason the letter came out was we had historically had 50%, a little better, a little more, and we spent it down. And all of a sudden, we were less than what we had been. We were on a trajectory to reduce it, and we were not at the same percentage level as other comparable municipalities along the beach, because we all said we wanted 50%. The other issue that they had in that letter, Lucky, was they wanted to make sure that we weren't on a trend to take money out of the fund balance to balance the budget. And so Debbie and Noel and staff worked on several different responses that showed that we were doing grant funding, we had raised our other rates, that we weren't just using our fund balance to balance the budget.
Right.
And that had been an argument with previous management over the past number of years to present us a $10 million budget with a $2 million gap and say, I'm gonna take it out of savings account. We said, you can't do that. You can't keep taking money out of the savings account to balance the budget. That is really what upset this LGC. That's why they wrote the letter. We were on a downward trajectory and we kept taking money for gap funding. I would ask you to go back, but the numbers are at where we're at.
Sure.
So
And the
we're
number
adding
that-
money, and let's continue with the budget.
The number that I'm working with, and that I presented to you previously was just the unassigned amount.
Okay.
So I'm not counting this restricted amount. And I will definitely go back to the state later on today and this week to confirm this understanding, that this is our 8%, and we shouldn't think about it as being a part of this unassigned amount.
It's not part of the unassigned, but it is part of the total fund balance.
That's true.
And that is the number, the total fund balance is the number that everyone wants us, I believe that's the number we're striving to get to 50%.
And I thought that it was 50% needs to come from the unassigned amount.
That was the question yesterday I had when we met, Lucky, because when we spend down the 3.1, we're not at 0, and now all of a sudden at 8 with the 1.2.
Yeah, I agree with Steve. If you don't include the 8%, we're making our job harder to get the fund balance. Because I think when the auditors come in, they count all that.
And the way it was explained to me is that the council had wanted the unassigned to be at 50%.
Okay.
Your total fund balance a lot of times was higher than that.
Okay. Anyway, let's keep
Yep.
progressing, because I think council is telling you we want to add more money to the bank account.
Right.
We're tired of spending.
Right, we just want a bigger savings, and I still think we need to have the conversation about where in that 30 to 50 we want it to be. But, that may be for the next council.
So what we're looking at, I presented a higher amount going back to the general fund potentially than this amount. So we've revisited the budget, looked at things, double checking. The number that I presented is incorrect. This is the right. This is closer to the right amount. We're proposing removing an admin 2 position from the roles, an intelligence officer, as we mentioned before, the police beach officers and the school resource officer. We've explored the COLA and merit strategy to figure out how it would be less impactful to the budget. And I'm also proposing, if we're open to meeting on June 3rd, to look at strategies including getting rid of the longevity pay and rolling that up into pay to meet that pay gap. In the enterprise fund, we're removing a billing representative. Potentially, that would be the supervisor position. And I'll speak more to that in a second. And same thing, adjusting their COLA and merit to match the towns. And again, subtracting longevity pay to put that into the pot for everyone's salaries to meet the pay gap. That 341,000 is a negative. That would come from the enterprise funds reserve.
So in order to pay the enterprise fund proposed budget, you're going to need to withdraw 340,000 out of the enterprise fund reserve account?
Yes, sir.
And part of that's going to be to help cover the shortfall in our bond numbers, I'm assuming, which is what we had done. Okay.
So just a question about the COLA and merit. You're pushing a point up to COLA to make it 3 instead of 2, and 1% to merit. How does that, that's really no change.
It's no change for, well, long-term.
But it moves the whole pay scale up, which addresses your pay study.
So you're saying
Yes,
it's only
sir.
1% that's pushing the pay scale up
Right.
instead of 2?
That just moves everybody up to get them closer to where the pay study says we need to
Right.
be.
Say it again.
By moving the COLA, the whole pay scale goes up,
That's right.
whereas the merit is not, it doesn't affect everybody. The COLA affects
Well, if
everybody.
everybody gets it, it does. I thought last year we said that merit is what adds to base pay, not COLA.
COLA adds base pay.
Yeah.
So you're saying they both
COLA,
do?
here's, if you have a 3% COLA, the whole pay scale moves up 3%. Everybody is affected. If the pay scale's saying we need everybody to be moving up, the 3% makes a bigger change toward that. In other words, it's a bigger bite to correct the inequities of the whole pay scale, not just a few.
That's correct. But the main issue here, though, is that the study is a little bit complex. There's a lot to address, and if possible, I think a special meeting would be appropriate to revisit this and to look at some modeling. But
On the enterprise fund, you're moving monies from the enterprise fund. I asked you the question the other day about what's our percentage of fund balance in the enterprise fund? I'm just, curious as to how that compares.
I've got that on my computer. I'll get that to you as soon as we dismiss.
Okay.
That's a good question.
Well, I think if we're moving from there, I'd like to make sure we're not, messing ourselves up, because obviously the enterprise fund, having a fund balance, helps us in those emergencies that might come up that you might not need to help us unless it's low, and if it's low, then that becomes a problem.
And, ma'am, you mentioned how are we going to pay for this? So with the decreasing of the positions, that will help fund a lot of this. From the last, the first budget to the second budget, we have cut a significant amount, almost $500,000.
Of which you're proposing to put 300 and some odd into the,
Yes.
okay, so what are you doing with the balance of it? Just you allocated it to some other projects
Uh,
back in?
My goal, we'll have to strategize and I'd have to understand your intent, but my goal at a minimum is to put in $100,000 back into the general fund.
One more time?
My goal at a minimum, an absolute minimum, from any excess that we have, is to put in at least 100,000 into the general fund. Minimum. How do we get there? Because I don't want to have a,
Well, wait a minute, I thought you just had a slide up there, not, that said you were putting 300 and some, 332 into the recommended budget savings, and that was gonna go into the general fund.
Sure, so this all can go into the general fund, yes, sir. However, what I'm proposing here is, these are all the cuts
Right.
that we've made, so if you decide that you'd like to fund some of these,
Gotcha.
then this number will decrease. If, when we meet for the pay study, if some of that goes to the pay study, then
But going forward, you have 468.
in cuts.
Right, so if we don't fund any of those, why
Then these-
wouldn't 468 go into the reserve account?
Versus 330.
Okay, hold on. Let me go back. All right, so my strategy for the budget was, staff, give me your dream list of everything that you want, so that I have visibility of what you think your needs are, even your unassigned needs.
You
Think-
said dream, not
Dream,
needs. There's a
dream.
big difference.
Sure, sure, sure.
Right.
But realistic dreams, not pie in the sky, everybody gets Lamborghinis. Realistic,
Yeah, that'd kill the budget.
realistic things, because I was new to the town and I wanted to understand what they think they needed. So from there, I made first line cuts
Right.
and second line cuts. So I presented a budget, the first budget, that had all of those cuts in it that were, so that I could understand what they thought they wanted, but that could wait. And then I presented a budget to you. We refined that budget even more, and we cut it. And
you
these,
refined that budget,
by all these things.
right, which is $468,000.
Right.
So I'm saying if you save $468,000.
That
why
represents-
does that number not say 468,000?
Where's the 150?
Short,
It was originally short 165, if you look at the
Thank you.
slide. that we
Thank
have
you,
previously.
okay, so your original proposed budget was gonna be short, okay.
Right.
Thank you, okay. So you
Okay.
had to cut 460 to get 332
Correct.
into the account.
Right.
And balance the budget.
yes,
And if I'm understanding all the readings, you're asking for a 2% or 2 points
Two
on
cent,
property
yeah.
tax, and adjusting COLA to 3 and merit to 1,
yes, sir.
and then the budget's balanced, and you intend to put potentially 332 into the reserve account.
Right.
Okay,
And reduce the longevity by 21,000.
right.
And if there are any of these,
If any of those we feel like giving you back, then that would come out of that 330.
yes, sir.
Right.
No, I was gonna ask, what else can you cut?
Of course you would.
I mean, that's where, no, you can't have anything back.
So keep going, Lucky, because we're getting
Keep
there. We're
going.
just warming up. We got.
I wouldn't be able to go to the grocery store and not get murdered or accosted, but go ahead.
Can you go back to that last screen?
Yes, sir.
The 100,000 for the Parks and Rec bathroom, which bathroom was that?
Eric?
Well, that's a combination.
And volleyball court.
And 60,000 for a volleyball court. So, I mean, I appreciate Eric's wish list, but number one, let's let Bucky go through. I went through this and made some comments that I wanted to share with council and management and see where everyone's at on it, so.
So we went back to staff and we said, hey, let's make some deeper cuts.
Parking lot?
What do you propose? And this is what we came up with.
Okay.
In general, this is all an estimate, but we're looking at our expenses of being a little over 15 million, our revenues, 15.2 million for expenses, 15.5 for revenues. So you'll see that our revenues, that $300,000,
That's that 332 that you were
Right,
just showing us earlier.
right. That
So
makes
let me ask Debbie a question. Debbie, on these sheets that you gave us?
Yes.
One of the questions we had before is, on the ones that we have today, are these through April, through March? Do we know?
Yeah, I put the date on that. That was through, May 20.
Thank you. I should have read, I didn't,
Yes,
I read the
yes.
numbers, not the dates. Thank
Yes.
you. May, so that's actually through May.
Yes, that's the actual revenues through May.
Wow. Okay, bummer.
And with some of those, like the sales and use tax, those are 3 months behind.
Well, we'll get to those. I mean, I wanted to let
Yeah.
Lucky go through his
Okay.
and then.
Again, these are estimates, best guess based off of the information that we have. And in terms of the general fund reserve, we're looking at a 2-cent tax increase, a 6.2% increase for the marina and dock rent, and not taking anything back from fund balance.
Okay.
For the enterprise fund, we're looking at a 10% increase with minimal increase next year.
Minimum being 5%, 8%?
5%, right, Debbie? It's 5% next year and 5% the year after.
That is what we planned. We were 8 to 12, and we
Right,
kind of
right.
said 12 was too much.
Yeah, we said we'd evaluate that each year, and so we have.
And so Debbie, with the 10% increase in the water and sewer fees, we've paid down previous debt, and we're still running a $300,000+ negative on our bond payment. So we're having to raise the utility rates to cover the
Correct.
bond payment.
Correct.
And so that we leave something in the reserve account.
And then we have some new debt that's come on as well. We bought the new street sweeper and 401 Dow Road. And we've been funding money for Phase C of the north end and those 5 critical stormwater projects. So those are other things that are hitting that.
Okay.
And so we need to be planning for. So that's the other reason that we need to keep the 10% increase.
And when you say, Lucky, when you have stormwater $1 per ERU, what are we talking?
And
What is that equivalent? Brian, what is that ERU?
Equivalent residential unit,
Thank
so
you.
it's per
Increasing that?
increase in that, yes, sir, that's part of the bond recommendations as
Yes.
well.
So our stormwater fee for every resident is going up. So when Patrick Boykin shows up and asks us, where's that money going, is our stormwater dollars that we're collecting every month from every resident in some kind of stormwater fund that we're using for stormwater projects? That's a big question I get, and I saw on here, Brian, where we have $300,000 worth of new stormwater projects, $900,000 worth of increases in maintenance this year. So I think we can answer that yes.
And I would imagine that would be part of our fund balance for the enterprise fund, which is why I want to know how much is in there.
I'll get that to you, sir.
Ed, and you remember the question also on the stormwater permitting fees for new construction, since it expanded out and those increased too. That portion of permitting itself goes into the stormwater line of accounting. Okay.
So maybe we should.
The change of fees, what that looks like based off of the meter size is here, or rates, these are residential rates of up to 3,000 gallons.
And the majority of our residents have that 5/8 to 3/4 inch, is that right, Mark? Okay. And that's the 3,000. Have we looked at doing something similar, or can you maybe work with the manager over the next few months and talk about something similar to what Curie Beach and show us those? They have that, yes,
1,000
usage
gallons to
fees went
2,000.
way up. They do, when you use more, they're trying to encourage conservation by, they reduced the 3,000 to 2,500, and then they went up exponentially above 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 gallons. Their rates doubled and tripled. We haven't done that.
They also frown upon irrigation. I didn't know how you guys felt about that. Strong.
Well, no, we want irrigation meters for those that choose to irrigate, and I think they do too. They just charge for it. They're trying to get everyone away from irrigating and doing a zero-scape.
The stormwater fees will change, as I mentioned, 10%, and these are what the rates would look like. Councilmember Pierce asked for an update on the vacancy, on the vacancies that we have in Town Hall currently. We have a handful of vacancies, not all of which will be fully staffed. We're looking at potentially not staffing a utility billing supervisor. We're looking at not staffing potentially the administrative support specialist position. The police changes that we've made have already reflected in this with the org chart. So on top of this, we have already reduced 3 police officers, 2 beach officers, and 1 school resource
So,
officer.
am I understanding what you're saying here, Lucky, is if we just said, don't hire anyone else and leave everything that's vacant, the town would save $660,000?
If you were to save that, if you were to say that, sir, then I would come back to you with the
I'm
next slide.
just saying that, is that, well, just
Now,
back
I know
up.
what you're going.
Yep.
Back up. I'm
Yep.
just-
Is that yes or no?
That's a yes. If
Yes,
we
sir.
didn't fill any of those positions and we left everything vacant and we overburdened our staff, we'd save $660.
Yes, sir.
I guess I would just point out to my fellow council members that the police officer 1 is 35, 36, and that's not to say anything different about a building construction review tech, but we're paying our review tech more than we're paying a police officer. And I love our water and sewer administrative people,
And
don't
they
get me
make
wrong.
$10,000 more.
Our environmental guys work hard, that's a tough job, but I mean, when I look at that pay scale, I'm pretty stunned that our first responders are at that level. So anyway, enough of the editorial.
Any other questions on this?
So my thought process,
So,
did you bring that
go
up?
back.
Because
Which
if we're
one
going
you
to,
talking
if we're
about
gonna
now?
save, why not adjust that pay scale there?
One more time?
Your thought process seems like what you're gonna propose is that if we are saving that amount, why not readjust their pay scale since they are the first responders,
Well,
right?
yeah, well, I'm just surprised that it is that, I mean, when you compare it to other positions, and everyone works hard, and it's just interesting.
I agree.
It was an observation, I was like, wow. Lucky, so on the current budget that's proposed, the chief came back and asked for across-the-board increase on pay scale. Does your budget reflect that additional increase from the?
It addresses it in part. I'm waiting for the finalized report from the consultant for the pay study, and
So the part that it addresses
Is
is
only
through
that
the
3%.
3% COLA?
Yes, sir.
But it's not the additional 120-some thousand or whatever that number was?
and that would have to come for that 300,000 that we're talking.
But we had that conversation as a council. It's a little difficult to say, we're going to give a pay raise across the board to this department when the other departments haven't had that.
Right.
So.
Well, and it creates, pay inequities that the pay study's trying to tell us how to fix.
Right.
So we'll be shooting ourselves in the foot.
Which is why.
Which is a common shot that we take.
Yeah,
Wait, so Lucky,
I'd like to
just
save some of my toes.
to summarize, Lucky, you want to drive down that $1 million pay study gap by 330 to address an aggregate increase in COLA. Salary and benefits across the town, for
So-
town employees, not just police.
Sure, I think that it's a little bit complicated of a question. You do not. So let me respond in the best way that I can. There are inequities with our pay.
Right.
The first responders are a definite priority area.
Good thought, I just can't.
Absolutely want to figure out how we can reduce the disparity in pay between our first responders in Carolina Beach and first responders
That's right.
in neighboring jurisdictions. Absolutely, that is.
Well, you cited the police pay study as, not the police pay, the town employee study as being a $1 million eye-opener.
Right.
What you showed a few slides earlier was about $340,000 you'd like to address part of it today.
Part of that money, at a minimum, I want some money to go back to the general fund. So to the extent that we have a consensus with council on how to use some of that remaining money to address the pay inequities, to address the pay disparities with neighboring jurisdictions for our first responders, I'd be interested in hearing that so that we can move forward.
So just one more thing I'd like to see, and I know you can't do it for me right now, I'm sure you'll have to get with Holly. Can you give us another line here that shows your benefit package, whether it be health insurance per month or per year, what you're getting in that benefit?
Sure.
You know, because I just want to make sure we all see the total benefit
The
package.
total load, right.
That's right.
Right, I mean, so.
What we're paying and what an employee is getting as well in exchange for working for the town. Because
ma'am.
I know, when I talked to you about this, that I had a quote for my business, and a certain age range was $900 a month in a benefit to have just medical insurance. So, you know, there is a benefit to having medical insurance or whatever else there is that you
So
get.
on that
And
Cell
slide right
phones,
there,
whatever.
To go back to the mayor's question here. Yes, some of this money here that we will be saving, I would request council consider using some of that to address the pay study.
so if you go to the employee slide that you had up there on the savings, just a second ago.
Yeah, you didn't say which ones you were.
Some of those you have already said we're not filling. Is that right?
Right. The administrative support specialist position on the top
Yeah.
and the billing,
Okay,
one of the billing representatives.
okay.
So 100 grand.
Right, there's 100, but that's base pay. I mean, I
But-
think Leanne's point is the total load,
More than.
15, 22%, 20%, something like that? 30 plus.
That's a lot.
But the utilities folks are not coming from the general fund. It's something else to consider.
Thank you for reminding us of that.
That's a good point.
Okay.
So, speaking of the utilities fund, we are currently staffed with one billing representative up front. In the last council meeting, there was an understanding from council that we were to be extremely conservative with hiring until we have adopted the budget. I'm requesting a departure from that consensus and that understanding to immediately look for support in the utility billing side.
So
And
just
this is
before
the
you move,
justification for that. ma'am.
were you able to talk with the parking company about what I talked to you about, that they said they could handle all the stickers, Freeman Park, they can handle the parking passes, golf cart
Staff
passes
is-
with no additional cost?
Mark is staffed with reaching out to them. Mark, do you have any updates?
Mark, is that you?
Excuse me.
That's Mark.
Hey.
We discussed with them, I had to talk to Debbie about just making sure the financials are correct, that if it goes into their account, if they're holding it for a certain amount of time. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't screwing finance out of anything.
What does that mean? I mean, why would it matter?
Say, well, basically, right now, we take the funds.
Mark.
You gotta come on up.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Speak
can't hear
up,
you.
speak up.
Right now, we take the funds in our billing. It goes directly into our finance, and we process the money the way it is. If we then go to a third party, I
To
don't
let them
know
collect
the
it.
exact, if they're holding on to the money for a certain amount of time before we get it, and I needed to discuss it with finance to make sure we're on the same page.
Okay, so let's work to a conclusion on that, because in reaching out to some of our other municipalities in the area, after hearing some of the feedback from the utility billing front desk, was that people are waiting in line, they're overburdened, we're not getting service. The parking company can handle that. So let's facilitate a way to make that happen. It doesn't cost the town any additional
Absolutely.
dollars. If they float the money for a week or two, it's not gonna be the end of the world for us
Okay.
as a community. And if it
Is that
alleviates.
true, Debbie? She's got this concerned look what you're
Do you
saying.
think it would be a
Oh,
problem
no, I'm
if it
just,
floated
I don't
money
know.
for a
I
week
mean,
or two?
So that's an absolute priority of ours to look into, and we'll come
I
back.
mean, it would
come back with a
greatly
response.
diminish the number of people that have to come into town hall and
Sure.
wait and fill out a form. The other thing that would like to ask is to figure out how to do as much of this as automated as possible, including billing utility bills. I hear people say, well, you know, I have to wait in line to pay my bill. And again, I would say, go try and pay your Duke Power bill in line, in person. Go try and pay your Spectrum bill in person.
Right.
Or your Cape Fear Public
Gotta
Utility
find the
bill in
place
person.
first.
You can't do it. It's all online. Occasionally, you can put a stamp on an envelope and mail it, but everything else is online. And so to burden our staff ladies or whomever at the front.
I fully agree.
With that, let's figure out a way that those people don't have to
So-
come in. The occasional person that needs to come in and change a billing address, which you can do online, we just need to reduce the number of people that are interrupting that workflow every day.
I fully agree on all of it. We, Lucky, Ed, Debbie and I have been working very hard trying to figure out a way to make this work. But in the meantime, what we're dealing with.
What seems to be the problem, I mean, when you say make it work, what is the problem making it work?
They just don't take the bills. They do all the clerical, the meter reading, the inputting of every read.
Right.
There's a lot going
And
on.
that they can
and
continue to do, but if they
They
get
can.
interrupted every 30 seconds with someone coming in and saying, I need to pay my utility bill,
No,
don't get anything done.
I agree, but the transition to that immediately isn't as easy
And,
as
we
us
currently-
working our way to it.
And we currently have online bill pay. We try to encourage people to do automatic drafts.
Well, that's
We're
what we have,
having
that's what we
trouble.
have, is we have automatic
Yeah.
draft. That is substantially
hate that.
different. That is substantially different
But we
than
have online bill pay, and we have trouble steering people towards.
I
that.
asked to go to online bill paying, and the staff people told me, oh, Steve, you have to bring us a void check, and that's the only way we do it.
No,
is
that's
auto
automatic draft. You-
They told me that is the only way to do it.
No, we have online bill pay.
They told me
You
that
go to
is
our
not
website
possible.
and you can pay your bill online.
Well,
So
I'm
maybe we
telling you,
need
I
to
went through that with
re-educate
Emily and
whoever's telling
Rachel,
us.
both.
Yeah.
We're talking about doing something on the billboard, something on a message board.
But I'm saying your staff people told me that is not
They
possible.
have to know.
They told me the only way to do it is with an auto draft. I had to bring in a voided check.
That's if you want to pay with checking, through your checking account. Because I think online, you only have the options to use a credit card or debit card.
It's all the same, okay.
Sir, we'll definitely
So,
clarify this.
Just a question for you, Mark. I don't know how parking fell in your department, but that's fine with me because I know you can do it. So I would just suggest maybe you reach out to maybe Wrightsville Beach, because I was told from the I didn't talk to the parking people. I called Scott, the guy that's the owner that that gave us the presentation.
Sure.
And when we voted to go with his company, I said, that's what I want, Scott. We want some personal service, and we want some suggestions from you. But he's telling me they do it in all these other towns already. I mean, they service Myrtle Beach, Wrightsville Beach, City of Wilmington, and if they're already doing it, they must know how to do it.
And I apologize.
Yeah.
I'll meet with them, but this is new with me on the parking.
Right. And I'd be happy to give you his phone number and.
Oh, I have it.
Okay, awesome. And you guys figure it out, and I know you can do it. I don't know how parking is you, but that's fine.
It's all right. It's just with the bills coming in, it becomes part of me.
Right.
So.
So whatever you come up with, that's somehow you got parking and you got all the vehicles. You were lucky, weren't you?
I guess so. I gave up stormwater, so
Happy New Year.
I'm okay.
That's right.
You must
Gil
have
had
some
all
real
of
good
that.
skills. So that's awesome. And whatever suggestions you come up with, I think we'd be happy to listen to.
Well, once I get
I don't wanna do
everybody together,
Yeah.
we'll present something.
And
to you
it's,
guys.
it's clear that the town manager is eager to do more automation. That's
Absolutely.
evidence of 2 weeks ago. Jumping right into it. DMV, don't got to go there either.
Yeah,
So-
I think the one thing, and Steve, you mentioned about it's easy to go online and stuff, but we do have some citizens that don't they don't have computers. They don't do any of that. They feel much more content handing a check. They don't even like to stick in the box. It's probably a small percentage total, but we do have
He's
those.
Tom,
right.
I would tell you, I believe it's an extremely small, and the reason I say
Well, it might
that
be,
is,
I don't
I
know.
went into the Bank of America, and I asked Paula, and she said, my God, Steve, even Curie Beach only accepts online. She said, do you know how many elderly people I have come in here that are ticked off that your town doesn't accept online bill paying, that they actually write? And she's talking about the elderly specifically, and retirees that have to sit down and write a check, which they just don't do any other time. So the number of people that come in here that say, I don't have a computer and I have to do it online, I mean,
Right.
Very low.
It's probably small.
when we're talking $1 million worth of budget impacts on employees, I would rather pay our employees and allow them to be more efficient, and pay them better than to keep hiring people so that we're, I mean, we
So
have
the real
mailbox out
question
front.
here is the reason we brought all this up, and Rachel's not here. But if we were to move all of that out of her department and figure out a way for the parking company to do it, how much time does that free up for that person?
So we're still evaluating this. We have a lot of test programs that we're looking to pilot very, very soon. One of them is to have a couple of laptops out front with staff so that we can get folks signed up to the online bill pay. We're looking to, as we mentioned, move parking towards linear for all those passes. But the
And let me just preface, I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, I'm saying I want you to look at it. I don't want to be, the one that made the catastrophe.
Sure. Appreciate that, ma'am.
Just preface.
I don't see it being a catastrophe.
I don't
Majority
think
of
it
what
will be
most people
either, but I
do,
don't know, so
online
just do your
payments.
homework,
So we will absolutely look into that.
But does that free up a lot of time? Can the window be open while she's doing something else?
I was really, really excited when I saw some email traffic about council members wanting to sit up front to see the dynamic. Part of the dynamic from this wonderful town is that not every person that comes to the teller, comes to the counter, is in and out. There's a lot of conversations, there's a lot of customer service that happens, a lot of other questions. So for you to see that, that dynamic would be quite valuable. But the
At
bottom
$1 million a year in employees, I appreciate that, but I'm not looking for the dynamic. If you go to our citizens and say, guys, we're $1 million short on payroll, we're gonna have to raise your taxes 4 points to cover payroll on an ongoing basis, I think you'll find out people will be a lot more brief in their conversations with council if it requires us hiring all these people. I'm telling you,
Agreed.
we need to be more efficient.
But speaking to staffing, so we were authorized 2 positions in the previous budgets for utilities, a supervisor and 2 billing representatives. Right now, we are only operating with 1. Again, these billing the billing staff come from the enterprise fund. The enterprise fund, not the general fund.
What does the billing supervisor do? Where is he or she supposed to be?
I'll defer to you, sir.
Because I'm confused. I know what the
That's
two
who
people in the
Rebecca was,
window
right?
do.
Originally, the billing supervisor was also the administrative assistant to.
In y'all's
Marina.
department,
Yes,
for both of you.
yes. And,
Was that
from my
Rebecca's position?
standpoint, I'm sorry?
Is that what Rebecca was doing?
Yes.
Rebecca, okay.
And unfortunately, that position was pulled in 2 different places, and, unfortunately, watching it didn't do either job that well. It just did 2 jobs mediocre. So what we wanted to do was split billing to itself and give a 3rd window person that we've had 2 people out sick before, nobody in the window, and everybody gets upset. So we wanted to keep a rotation up there, but that was a speculation with everything going the way we were hoping. Now we're looking at the downsizing and becoming more efficient. We really just need the 1 person, so 2 billing representatives, because when one wants to go on vacation or one's sick or somebody's not there, we still have to man the window. We can't just close it. Or
Well, we have
what
been.
I've been told. We have been now because we have 1 person who now is working extremely hard. And the only problem is, what happens if we lost that person? All the information, everything we know goes with her. And we have no backup. So the redundancy of what we're looking at is to fill that position, have 2 people, 1 of them work on most of the clerical while the other stays in the window and does the.
So let me ask you, just so I understand.
Yes.
So if the water billing supervisor person's in your department, does that mean that whole area is under you too?
Yes.
Okay. So we're actually printing bills and stuffing bills and processing bills,
Yes.
okay, which is what I think Councilman Shuttleworth was referring to.
Yes.
So if all that other stuff was moved, does that take a burden off of
It does,
that person?
it does.
Which is why I applauded Lucky's closing the window for a few hours every day, because, look, when I say efficient, I don't think our staff's not efficient. I think sometimes they get interrupted, and if Rachel can't, she's got to stuff 6,000
Fair.
envelopes with bills every month. That's a hard thing to, is there another way to automate that? I don't know. But if you take issuing parking decals and Freeman Park decals out of their responsibility, and you encourage, force, and cajole people to make online utility payments, that should leave them more time to do the clerical part, which is important. The town needs to get their bills out. So I, you know, and
We're under a pretty strict timeline. And that's
Right,
where
I think
we're
it's-
trying to become more efficient, but also more proactive with what you're talking about is.
so
staying
I
more
think if you, you know, again, if you have hours of operation to come in and physically pay your bill in-house, and you need to do that, doing it a few hours a day versus 8 hours a day, it's a constant interruption trying to get workflow done.
That's right.
It-
But not only that, but the average resident works 8 to 5.
Right.
They can't make that time frame of a 12 to 5 or a 12 to 4 to get in.
So
Right.
Lucky,
Sir.
in the last utility
Don't leave,
bill,
I got a question.
did a change in the hours, was that put on the bill itself, or an insert saying the new window hours are X?
I do not.
And here's an alternate way to pay,
Not on
you
the
know?
bill.
I think we're probably so undecided, maybe that's.
No,
why
what I
that
mean,
haven't
since
happened.
you've instituted the new times.
I think no, sir, there was not, to my knowledge, a notice in the bill. I think it was just a test program. It still is a pilot program to see the effectiveness of that. It's too new to tell
I
whether
mean, if
that's
it's gonna
gonna
be at least a
long-term.
month, it ought to,
I don't think a billing has gone out yet.
So the question I have is,
whenever it is.
during that time frame, the 12 to
I don't
5,
see it.
resident walks in,
Like crazy.
is Nyla or is Rachel instantly reminded them like, hey, do you know we do online payments? Can I take a split second to show you?
We
So-
have signage up that says.
But not just signs, because some people, when you go in to pay a bill, you're just so
Well, no,
pigeonholed that,
the people are aware of it, but most people will just come in and say, oh, it's closed, I'll come back. And you say, well, we have bill pay, but you also have people come in to play planning permits and
Yeah.
everything else. It's not just.
Well, why
Okay.
isn't that over in planning for the person who's at the front,
Because they collect all the bills and revenues they have.
in that window?
Right.
Okay.
So,
Okay, it's
and
fair.
again, I mean, I have heard from plenty of the builders, I can't come in and get my permit
I've
at 8 in
heard-
the morning. No, you can't.
Right.
And call the county, because the county will tell you the same thing. Other places tell you the same thing. We do certain things, call, get an appointment. I mean, I think it's incumbent on council to start encouraging our residents to be a little more respectful of staff's time so they can actually get their jobs done. If you're constantly interrupting, that's why half the reason we put locks on the doors is so people don't walk back there and interrupt Brian all day long on a stormwater question when he needs to be doing something, or interrupt you. I don't mean to get on the soapbox, but I
I
just
agree. I had
think
the same
we
thing at
can-
my office. People walk in and out all day. Oh, I saw your car. I want to stop by and
Right,
talk to you.
so I think it's
Never get
incumbent on
involved.
us to help tell people, look, and I told several of
getting
the
there, Lucky,
builders that
just hang
called
on.
me, I said, I'm
Stand
sure
by.
you can, I can't get my permit Wednesday morning. I said, oh my God, cry me a river. Go in Wednesday afternoon or go in Thursday morning. It's,
We
So-
try to be accommodating, but we can't just give
Right.
everybody everything.
So question, I am getting a lot of things with my business
I
where
hope they
people
heard
are
that.
sending me electronic bills. People don't send paper bills anymore.
Right.
Now, you can opt for a paper bill. Have you looked at that option?
We're scheduling a meeting with the FMS, who runs all of our computer systems, to see how we can branch out and become way more effective.
Because I think that would be huge, because most people would prefer an emailed bill.
And we currently do that. It is an option. So we
I
have
don't
cer-
even know that.
So we have a certain number of people. So maybe these are just things that we need to push out to make people aware they can do.
I don't know.
I don't want to get a bill everybody, I'm on
Yeah.
I'm on auto draft now, which
Yeah.
I detest. I'd rather just go online myself and pay it, but they do an auto draft. So I get a bill in the mail that said, this is not a bill. Reminder, your auto draft is coming. You know, meanwhile, I get my Spectrum and my Duke Power. Everyone else just sends me a bill
Yeah.
on my computer. I get it on my computer, I look at it, I can download, I can do what I want, I can, you know.
so it sounds like we beat this horse.
So, but I have two more questions, and then I'm gonna let it go.
That's fine.
I will tell you this, and Steve, don't even comment. So I will tell you this. I personally had to give a lease to a tenant. It was a commercial tenant. She said, well, I couldn't go this day. So I went the next day, then I had to wait in line for an hour because everybody who couldn't get in the day before were there that day. So
compound,
there is a huge,
yes.
yes, it's a compound of that wait. So just let you know that.
Did
The
you
other
talk to
thing
them
is-
about online payment?
Well, you can't do that when you're hooking up water, or you have to come in
There's
person with a
certain
copy
things
of
that
your
you have to
lease.
come in for.
So I said, I'm sorry, you know, I'll fix it.
So where's the question at? Because you
So
said you had
here's,
two questions.
here's the question. I asked this question before. What are we paying the temp services when we hire temps? What is the hourly pay that we're paying them? And I really couldn't get an answer from anybody. So I want to know, if you're going to hire a temp for that window, what are we paying them by the hour? Is it
We're not
$14,
hiring
$20? I mean, we can't just call up and say, send me 4 temps, which I know we're doing, but we need to know what we're paying for those temps.
We tried to temp in the window, and it
Doesn't
didn't
work
work
as
so
well.
well. And you're dealing with very, very private information and, you know, the financial part of it. So we have to pay that one more. But the vast information that they have to basically learn extremely quickly
Oh, yeah.
it's too much for a temp.
Okay, now I'd still like to know if you could find out, and Brian, I know you use a lot of temps, what is the hourly pay we're paying the temps? I think I asked that a while back and nobody
Each
knew.
position is
And
probably
it's
gonna be different.
it's based on what we're asking them to do.
Do you know, Holly?
varies. The bill rate is usually about $16 or $17 an hour that we pay the agency.
Yeah, I understand.
Makes them around $10 or $11 an hour, depending on the skill set.
That's a lot. I mean, so the temp is getting a minimal pay, and
It's
I
not
know
a
the
lot.
rest is going
We're
for
not paying
benefit.
insurance or benefits or codes, so as long as
Oh, I like
it's not a
temps.
lot.
No, I get it. I like temps.
All right, we're done beating that horse.
Well, how about the idea, guys, if we didn't do a temp, but we did a part-time person half a day? So we don't have, you know, we do a
10
part-time
to 3.
employee.
8, 9, it's 2.
I mean, someone that would still be there, but it wouldn't be a temp looking for another job.
Yeah.
That we train them and all of a sudden they're gone. That if we got someone that could work half a day.
Which is what
Time and
Lucky was proposing.
Exactly.
What's
I
in the
think that's
budget.
where he's going. I know people who work just for the benefit, if they have one.
That might be, as you move towards greater automation, that might be a good phase plan,
And
my
they
thoughts.
work just for the
So
benefit.
to recap your comments,
Streamline.
yes, we are looking for automation. Yes, we are looking to work with Linear. And I researched some of the law regarding our billing, and I'd like to recite this because it's really important. It's only a sentence. Each officer and employee of a local government or public authority whose duty it is to collect or receive any taxes or other monies shall, on a daily basis, deposit or submit to a properly licensed and recognized cash collection service all collections and receipts.
And where did you get that? That's a strategy?
No, it's not, well.
statute.
General statute.
This is general statute, but, and the sources on the bottom here. My strategy that I'm proposing is to assist the utility desk with either a part-time or full-time person. My strategy is to present to you a request for deviation from what we spoke about last council meeting, where we are conservative about hiring. I would like to immediately work on this so that we can address this concern and meet this requirement.
Lucky, was this one of the vacant positions that you wanted to fill?
Yes, sir.
Thereby leaving 4 vacant positions?
Yes, sir.
At the beginning of next fiscal year?
Because this was already budgeted in the previous years.
So when you
It's not a new
actually
position.
showed the numbers earlier, you showed this as you want to keep?
Yes,
and
sir.
With the vacant positions that will remain, this is what
Right.
is saved?
So we're currently authorized, or currently budgeted for
Full-time.
2 utility individuals, a supervisor and a representative. We won't use the supervisor, but we're requesting
Right. And
one
this
other
will all
billing
come out
staff
of the
person.
enterprise.
From the
fund
enterprise
anyway.
fund, not the general fund.
Let's rock and roll.
I'm fine with that.
I would
So
go.
if that's okay with council, I'd like to move forward with this.
Yep.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we need to look at the overall budget, the details you need to do.
Sure.
Mhm.
Again, this is not a new position. This is not a request for
It's not,
a
yeah,
new
it's
job
just
classification.
filling the vacancy.
This is just.
No problem with that,
just
go
so that
ahead.
we're working together as a team and we're on the same page.
Right,
There's a need and we'd like to address it.
I agree with
So
that.
you're talking about hiring a full-time person in the window or a part-time person?
Well, we can discuss this also.
If we're moving out half of the load, then it shouldn't be a full-time employee.
Well, that could be his prerogative.
That's where I'm at. I think we gave the manager direction that said, use your best judgment. We'd prefer if you leave these vacancies, but at some point, I feel like we have to let the manager manage.
And I agree,
If he
and-
says
and-
there's a spot, then okay, do what you think you need to do. You know, you've heard our concerns. You've heard our concerns about staffing. You've heard our concerns about payroll. You've heard our concerns about automation. You're the manager. And if you have a strategy, I support your ability to.
And I will say
Well,
that
that
window
that's
is
your
the
strategy.
main
And-
place in
and I agree
town
with
hall
that
where we're
because-
servicing our citizens, and they deserve to at least have that service.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, so,
Yeah.
but I don't want you to hire somebody full-time and then go back and then realize you don't need them and then say, I'm gonna have to cut you. You can't cut back. You can give more, but you can't cut back.
Yes, ma'am.
Well,
My
evaluate-
opinion.
we'll
I think
evaluate
he's
something.
got
You can
the
never
skills.
take away what you've already given.
I think he's got the skills to make that decision. And I have not been in favor of freezing any positions. I think that's the manager's decision, not ours.
And equally
Unless we
lucky,
vote as a council, and we have not voted as a
That's
council
correct.
for that.
That's correct. I think we were very intentional in not doing a public hiring freeze just because of the general comments that said, but we did collectively send a message that said, please be cautious while we're working through this budget process.
Well, I
But if
didn't.
the manager comes and
I
says he's got
didn't
to
make
manage.
that, I didn't make that.
We all
but
have
I know a lot
opinions,
of you
that's
did.
right.
I did say it was a consensus. I didn't say
So
it
one
was
of the
unanimous.
things
Correct.
that I mentioned in the last council meeting towards the end, I know it was very late, is that it's very much my desire for us to work as a team and to understand each other's concerns and priorities. And if one of your concerns and priorities is to, even if it is within my purview to address HR issues, for something like staffing and the budget, you've got a concern, I want to be respectful of that. I want us to work together to make sure that we're on the same page. I believe in teamwork.
Yeah, well, I think, yeah, you can hear individuals and what they think, but when we direct you to do something, it should be a vote of the council. I do have one question.
Yes,
I know it may be early to ask, but when you're doing the cuts and you're talking about the truck, I didn't know if that truck you're talking about cutting is the vac truck?
It is not the Vector truck, sir.
Okay, because are we still budgeting to get that?
Yes.
Excellent. I feel good about that.
And before you move away from this billing strategy, are we implementing, since we want to go to more automation, and I see the credit card fees in this printout as an expense, are we charging a surcharge, a 3% surcharge on any credit cards being used in town hall?
Yes, currently for all non-utility payments.
All non-utility?
Yes, so Parks and Rec fees, planning fees, that.
How about building permits or?
Yes, all of
Okay.
those fees.
Because I see that there's like a $35,000 credit card fee in here. What's that? But you have an income as well as an expense.
Correct,
Okay.
correct, because.
Online payments,
We'll
that's
be
the-
charged
like you would at your
fees,
shop.
but that's to offset.
But we are charging it.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to make sure we do implement that. Everybody does it, so. 'Cause those numbers are huge.
Yeah, we get a discounted rate on our utility side, and we were trying to encourage more online customers to pay, and we felt if we tried to charge them a surcharge, then we would be in a worse position than we are now, where less people are wanting to pay online.
So you're saying you're not?
We're not for the utility side.
Well,
but
I'm gonna suggest that
any-
you do.
I did too.
Just do it. Don't, again, you cannot take away something. You can't, just do it. Now you can't not do it and then go back and it's 6 months now, oh, by the way, now we're gonna start charging you a fee. Just do it, you know? That's my personal opinion. You guys,
it's not unprecedented. not-
everybody I pay online charges me $7.95.
Does that need to be a motion, or is that just,
No, you just take that as what is a suggestion, you make that decision, is what I'm taking it.
You can't give something
Somebody makes a
and then
motion.
take it away later.
Got it.
Use a fight. It's just a fight.
um,
My personal opinion.
okay.
Proceed, please.
Beat that horse down. That's for the next horse.
So, there are a handful of reasons that I would like us to have a special meeting next week.
What
One is,
time do you propose that meeting?
Whatever time's good for you, sir.
Later would
budget
be
stuff,
better.
or
May get me
Excuse
on
me?
the phone.
for budget or for what?
For budget.
That's Monday.
And the couple reasons to justify this meeting are as follows. I've proposed cuts to nonprofit organizations that I think that we owe it to the residents for council to help hammer out. We have to address the pay study. And that's the biggest
So
one.
your desire to address the pay study, is that because you're going to propose something that would affect the current budget that we have seen today?
Yes.
Okay.
Potentially, yes. There's the gaping or glaring disparity with pay for the police officers that we have to address. How much of the surplus money that's going back into the general fund do you authorize us using to address that situation?
I would think, I'd like to have feedback on what increments and what, at each
Absolutely.
increment level, what difference would that make?
Absolutely. So what I propose is a meeting on Monday. I will run some models. Hopefully it'll be a
Then
quick
how's the
meeting, and we'll look
Budget
at it.
gonna balance then.
Well, we have $300,000 surplus right now. At
Depending
a
on what we
minimum,
cut from the other list.
at a minimum. So I don't propose using all of that 300,000. I propose some of it going back to the general fund.
But you said earlier at a minimum of 100,000, which is an
Um,
indicator that, I get it. So what you're saying is we have a budget that you're
230.
presenting today. This is a budget that,
Could alter.
you're saying next week you want to present us something on Monday, and then we have a council meeting the week after that, hopefully with the manager's message and an approval of a final budget.
Right.
And you're telegraphing that I'm going to change these numbers because of a pay study next week. And that's what you're telegraphing.
That is, sir.
Okay, just so I'm, make sure that we're all understanding that's what's coming.
Right.
What's that number?
Well, it's gonna be about 200 and some $1,000, my guess, Joanne. 'cause-
I think that's where he's focusing in on.
So-
230?
My goal at a minimum is
So much for that
is
hidden
to put
secret.
100,000 in, 100,000 back into the general fund, but that may not be your goal.
So Lucky, you showed the 3:30 earlier. That's a special meeting really to drill down into that and to gain.
To address the police,
Okay, police, because I'd asked you about that.
Yes, sir.
Directly linked to a tax increase based on the study we got.
Yes, sir.
Presentation we got in January, thank you.
Yeah, but right now, I mean,
So are you cutting anything
we're
else,
also
or are you just
speaking of
adding
the-
back? That's what I wanna know.
are you done? Yeah, I have some
You're not done
questions.
cutting them.
I have some questions. I went through, we got these two handouts today. Okay? So we have this budget with line item cuts 1920, and there's some highlights on here.
Right.
I only made it halfway through.
Now, if I start through here, a concern I have under the, fire department, I believe it is line item, it's in the, rescue service fire apparatus, $400,000 over 10 years, manager cut, moved to next year, $48,000. Of all the departments, no offense to the rest of you guys, our fire department has continually planned out capital improvements over a period of time. I'm concerned, we need a fire truck at a period of time.
Sure,
So
may I
I'm-
address that one
Yes,
right now?
please. Yes,
Okay,
please.
great.
Oh, and also, manger cut, or is that,
Sure.
it's just a typo you just need to correct?
You had that cut list, Lucky.
So, go ahead, address that one for me. I'm
Yeah.
gonna go through mine, and then maybe Joe will
That's
let
fine.
everyone go down the list.
So in this,
make it
when I presented the grants slide, there is a, can I make this bigger?
So you're hoping to get it from that fund?
Right, there's the Golden Leaf program, and one of the,
Are you saying that the rescue service fire apparatus might be eligible for that $48,000?
vehicles,
Yeah.
equipment,
Okay, because I do know that we have worked hard trying to put together 3, 5, and 10-year capital improvement plans, and to move something out of a department's idea of having that in there was a concern. If you're saying you have a plan for it, and you're gonna attempt to get it somewhere else, great.
Yeah, sounds good.
I'm looking at line item, I'm gonna move through these pretty fast so other people have a chance to do it. I'm gonna look at, on page 1, 2, 3, 4. Page 4, middle of the line, install new server on premise for police department. VC3, monthly IT support. We're going from 80,000 in the budget this year to 170?
I haven't had a chance to go through it.
I did it while we were chatting on
I mean,
other,
I don't, I need
material.
time. There's like 50,
So,
100 pages here.
what the heck did we do that increased us, Debbie, from 80,000 a year to 170? Or Lucky, do you know? I mean, we got VC3 monthly IT support, approximately 14,000 a month.
Sheila's coming up.
I've already asked about that.
I mean,
too.
we doubled it.
No, it's awful.
Regarding before VC3, we had monthly fees for support from Hooks. We bought new equipment every year. We had, in addition to, the total for that each year was around $130,000.
Okay, so the 80 is a little misleading. When it says
Correct.
80 last year, that didn't include some of the things that are
Exactly,
included in
it
the
didn't
170.
include
Thank you. That's
some of
all
the
I-
But that's
I
a
guess-
four-year contract. I asked that question. That's a four-year contract, right?
We have 4 more
So
years.
it's gonna be
Yes, ma'am.
$170,000 for 4 more years.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Moving on, I'm just asking some questions so the manager can pick up on them where he wants. We're going human resources, maintenance operations. It's account 450. Item 2, we're going from 82,000 to 143,000. And when I scroll through some of these things, we're going for, specifically contract services go from 13 to $68,000. And we're going from 3,500 to 16 on pre-employment psychological evals. I mean,
So we have a lot of police officer vacancies, and that's a standard process expense to fulfill those.
so we've gone from 13,000 to 68,000 in contract services in the HR department. $50,000, of which a big chunk of that is. And then we go electronic time locks. I see we had 0 and you're going to 20. There's a couple of them that.
I'm not sure how that changed from 45 to 20 in the last budget that I saw. It was 45,000 in the last budget.
I just see that every one of these maintenance and operations budgets, most of them went up.
Is there no
substantially.
answer for that? We can't follow you flipping through that fast.
It's fine.
Well, it ain't fine. I want to follow what you're doing. So I have a question while you're flipping.
Yes, ma'am.
So how did 45 go to 20?
For
with
which
the
one?
time clocks? It's not on this sheet, but the last budget you presented was 45,000, and I said, what is that for? And you said time clocks.
And now it's 20?
Now it's
Is what you're
20
saying?
in this budget.
One of them went to $10,000 on the previous slide this morning, removing the case study costs from next year. I was able to fund it out of this year, so that's 10,000 right there.
So that was part of the 45,000? That was I guess, a capital improvement or something from your department? Okay. And just, I have a question about the general liability insurance. That's not, who does insurance? Who's the insurance person? You. So is that just, that is not fire? It's not hazard? That's just general liability?
That's property and liability.
Okay, so it's both. Okay, all right, that was my question, because I see an increase on that as well. Do you quote that out every year?
Not every year, we did about 2 years ago.
I would suggest doing it every year, because I have to do the same thing, and it's huge difference, the numbers you get for insurance. So I see the increase here is, I don't know, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000.
Yeah, and it probably won't come in, we had a reevaluation, they come in and go and look at all.
Yeah, I understand.
And it increased, so that's what.
Okay. Go ahead, Steve, I was giving you a minute to catch up.
Oh, I'm all right. I'm going to go up to, what they call the 10, which would be, must be environmental. I'm not sure which one. It's pretty far back. It's 10-580, maintenance and repair to the buildings. You're taking out can lightings at the town hall, I understand that. What I'm concerned about replacing a chiller pipe for $50,000 that we're not doing that. Do we have a problem with our HVAC at town hall that the chiller needs to be replaced? Is that what we're talking about?
We had that in there, and it's out back. It's old looking, rusted, corroded, that type thing. But then we backed it out in anticipation of possible movement forward in the future years.
But you're
Not
gonna have to
absolutely
do it.
necessary. No, ma'am, we don't have to.
In some point, you
No,
don't?
no.
I don't know what a chiller pipe is, but
Yeah.
Not this year, but you're projecting at some point, 3
Yes, sir.
years down the year?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Couple
we can
years.
get away for another year.
Yes, sir.
because at a certain age, it has to be replaced.
Kind of like, yeah, old and crusty like me.
Maintenance would be the word.
You know, we just spent some money on reconstruction and refurbishment of boardwalk gazebo planters, but I see another $25,000 in the budget for next year. Did you
You might
not
as well
get
come
He
everything?
said
back,
that was
Brian.
yearly.
Did you not? Yeah, Brian, stick around.
I need exercise. Yeah, we Band-Aided what's up there now to make that look good. I mean, it looks,
Okay,
looks pretty good. It's a good Band-Aid, but we want a Keystone Wall as the,
Right, so
overall
that's
band.
what you put in there, okay.
Yes, sir.
He
Then I
said
saw the manager
he-
took out the expansion of town hall front parking lot. I think that's good that you took that out, Lucky, because council had, I mean, we heard it as an idea, but I don't know that we ever said, let's go
I never
do
knew.
that. So anyway, then unfortunately for Eric,
His dream list was really big.
bu- 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 bu-
Before you go to Eric, can I ask a question? What do we do with iCompass? I'm gonna look it back at you, because I think that's you.
That's what I'd use with my, so we don't print thousands of pieces of paper. I do the agenda for the council on my computer.
It's actually our agenda and minutes and live streaming software
Okay,
itself.
okay,
Yeah.
all right. And public notice is 21,000. Is that the only way we can do a public notice? Is there no new way besides print media?
General legislation is trying to come up to speed with that, but there still are requirements.
So it's still
certain
print
things-
media?
I'm sorry,
It's still print media, and that's what you're paying for?
yes.
Okay, okay.
Okay, unfortunately for Eric, I see where you took out the fence repairs at Mike Chapel Park and you took off the overseeding, sod, and top dressing of the fields that we're actively using, but you left in $150,000 for the Lake Park playground. And I have a problem with that in twofold. One, we had originally talked about some engineering and some planning for it, not just funding $150,000 to redo the park. There were some speculative numbers in there. And the second is, if we're gonna do the lake project, are we really gonna get the park redone between September and March of next year? So I would encourage you to withdraw that 150 or get a more realistic number. I mean, do we have an engineer's plan?
We're currently working on that right now. We just met with a design firm to go over the master plan for Lake Park. We're currently going through that process in conjunction with the lake dredging potentially. So
Right, so this has a funding, and this current budget has a fund in there of $150,000 to do the playground. I'd love to have the playground done.
Yeah.
But I'd rather put that 150 towards the $1 million shortfall of payroll. That's just me. That's just, these are editorial comments I'm giving to you and to the management. The council can weigh in where they feel.
So while you're standing there, Eric, can we talk about, I mean, I thought, let me just preface, you do a great job.
called you up here.
I
Yeah.
love your ideas.
Yeah.
And what you're doing in your department directly affects the citizens, probably more than, that's what they see. So what do you really want to do? What's your number one? What's your priority list?
Dream big.
No, don't. Give us a realistic, because I.
Realistically, the
Yeah, I don't
biggest
like
thing,
pie in
the
the
biggest
sky.
thing complaint that we get is that we do not have a playground at Lake Park. So we wanted to address that.
You mean at the lake?
At the lake. So we wanted to address that by doing, instead of just putting a playground in the same area that it once was, right? So that playground had to go. It was not safe. It was a hazard. So instead of putting it there, we wanted to dream big. So the committee came up with the idea of doing a master plan in conjunction with the lake dredging, potentially. So the idea is, if the lake dredging does pick back up, we're simultaneously giving the residents something to look forward to.
How much did we spend, do you recall, on redoing the Mike Chapel playground?
The Mike Chapel playground was grant funded, and we community built that, and it was roughly about 50,000.
Just as a perspective, that's in this budget today that we are, if we don't have a meeting Monday and we approve this budget, that's 3 times the number. I love the lake park. I mean, I want
Right.
to see a playground down there, but 3 times the dollars when I'm telling the police chief he can't have, or the fire department, he can't have 50 towards a fire truck. I got to balance.
Yeah.
And when I hear that we have a leak at the rec center, the roof isn't fixed, and I agree with,
So,
taking care of what we have in the way of sod on the field and overseeding that with
So-
the soccer we get.
so that wasn't all taken out, it was just cut in half. We cut that in half.
Okay.
And the fencing we cut in half and phasing it over a couple of years.
Okay.
So,
So going along the mayor's comments a couple of months over the past few months is, hey, if we're gonna talk about a property tax increase, let's have some demonstrable programs that we can apply it to. And so far, it's a balance. It's just a balance, Eric. And
So
I
we had-
appreciate that. I mean, the sand volleyball course that you took out here on Cape Fear, we've talked about those, but we've never seen a plan on where those would be in the budget. So having 61, I know you took it out, but it was a loss leader anyway, because we had never approved that.
Right.
I'd rather see you worry about the bathrooms at Mike Chapel Park, protect what we have before we expand with another.
Right.
And I agree with Steve.
Right.
We don't want to have to dig through this budget to pull out what we never agreed to do in the first place. So
Correct.
just don't even put it in there. I'm not saying we'll never do that, but I don't think we're ready to do anything on Cape Fear yet. Not
And-
until he figures out the game.
I agree with that.
Until Mark figures out what we're doing, then we can't do, so it shouldn't.
And Eric, I'm a little
Champion.
concerned about the lake too, so we've just given town direction to go ahead and start planning in parallel to whatever the Army decides for the lake dredge project. We don't know necessarily where their mobilization site's gonna be in relation to where you wanna put the park, Because
Correct.
they're looking at it different, obviously, the
Correct.
east side of the lake, so if that's disruptive to any new build,
Correct.
Yeah.
And so we had money in this fiscal year's budget for a playground at Lake Park.
Great, then let's
But we
spend it
didn't
on the
use it.
bathrooms at the Mike Chapel Park.
Yeah, because
In
Lake
other words,
Park's
that
gonna.
And I have money in the budget to
That
look
goes
at an
to Joe
architectural
Dan's,
design. for it.
You have
comment
what
about
now?
these carryover dollars. If we have carryover dollars in the 18-19 budget that
That's
we
a
haven't
good
spent
question.
yet, go to the manager and say, I've got this, we're not gonna
What
get the
can
Lake Park
we-
done, let's put it on one of my other high priorities.
That's a good question. We want to see that too. What departments have money left over from last year's budget and how much?
I'm just saying apply.
How much you got left?
So, for rolling over, okay. So for instance, rolling over, we have the money for the Lake Park design that we're gonna be starting now, rolling some of those funds over. And we
Dollar
also
sign.
have Ryder Lewis Park, the bridge.
Dollar sign, how much money do you have?
So that'll be rolled over, they requested to be rolled over. Was it 62 for the bridge? 92,000?
Yeah, but
We're
some
not
of those,
spending yet?
some of those we approved to spend, you just haven't been able to
Hadn't
get.
spent
the-
it
We have
yet.
not
haven't
been able to spend
get the
it,
job
correct.
done.
You haven't
to
spent it
spend
yet. I understand.
Correct, yeah,
Right.
yes.
Well, those-
But I would say if there's allocations that
Possible,
you
let's
could
do
shift to
it.
do some of those priorities that.
The bathroom's a big one at Mike Chapel for
I
sure.
think so.
It's-
Can we get grant, is there any
something.
money guy over
There is.
there?
So-
Free
so
money guy?
our-
Is there any money for us?
Our first goal is to get a design. We want to get a design,
Right,
see
so
what
my
works.
problem is you had 150 in there to build something that we don't have designed yet. You haven't spent the design money yet, so the 150 to me is like, if the manager's looking for another place to save a few dollars, I hate to hit the parks department, because I'd like to have. a
Yeah.
pool.
That's right.
Let's flash
No,
it.
no,
I don't
no.
get any of that.
It's all about, so basically our goal was, we wanted to do this design, right? We're gonna have a master plan, we're gonna have public meetings, we're gonna get a lot of public input. Once that design's done, we just wanted to have some good faith and some seed money to get these projects rolling. So that's kind of where we put that in there. Could it be less? Could it be more? Could we take it out and revisit that for next year? We could do all those things. I'm not opposed to any of that. That was just our thought process, and it wasn't just mine, it was, talking to Ed and talking to the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee and,
So maybe we reduce this by 100,000 to keep 50,000 in there for design use.
Well, we already have the money for design.
we do have the money for design.
You've
Does it
got
cost
150 bonus in there
$50,000
that
to
I'd rather
design?
say,
We'll work
you
on
have
it.
$50,000 out of the fire department on a capital fire truck to put 150 in a Lake Park playground that we're not actually gonna probably get built this year if we actually do a lake project. If we don't, then maybe.
We don't know if we're doing it, so you can't put it in
So,
anyway.
just those kind of things.
Sure, absolutely.
Especially if you're talking.
Does
about
it really
dropping
cost
free-
$50,000 for a plan? That's more than people make in a year.
No, it doesn't. No,
Isn't that what I just
not
heard?
this one.
So I'm gonna move through
Those
this, 'cause I
items-
know other people do.
It can,
yeah.
not this one.
My next ones were, maintenance operation was my friend Brian, who's doing great. We've gone from
Just leave Brian
500
alone.
563,000 to 955. I was like, oh my God. But when I look at it, these are the demonstrable issues that we could show residents. We've got drainage reroute, snapper, mackerel, pinfish, Columbia, bowfin. There is $100 and some thousand there.
I
These
can't
are all
argue that.
positives. These are all-
Exactly. We
these
can't
are all-
argue.
No, I'm saying these are very positive things that we can tell the community.
This
We've got
is what you're paying for.
another $285,000. Greenville Pump Station, Henniker Ditch, 600 block Charlotte, Henniker Ditch. I mean, there's,
That's part of the
you know,
5 plans that we
yeah,
spoke about.
Sturden, Spartanburg. I mean, there's $285,000 on just the one page, and there's 100 on the other. So there's almost $400,000 worth of stormwater improvements that make it easier for me and more palatable to support a 2-point tax increase. That's where I'm driving on all that. That's all.
Hoo-yah, Leanne?
Okay, well, since I only got a quarter through, just a question, mobile laptops, 19,000, who's getting mobile laptops?
The people in the front of the billing office are gonna show them how to sign up.
Is that for your people?
Yeah, part of it.
We implemented CityWorks, for everybody knows basically our work order program.
Right.
And while we're out there.
I'm not a
doing-
CityWorks fan, but keep going.
I wasn't in the beginning, but I have,
It grew on you?
it grew on me for the fact that if we were able to go into real time, which was the idea of what it was based on, was our guys are out doing meter reads, and at the end of the day, they bring in 1,000 reads and give it to the girls in billing, and they have to manually do that. If they have a mobile tablet and they're putting them in, and it's automatically going there, we're streamlining, saving everybody time and money to be able to do everything in real time instead of writing it on paper, bringing it here, and putting somebody else behind.
Well, I'm not going to argue
That
with
makes
you.
it more
I'm not, if you think that, but what I can't wrap my mind around, and we don't need to talk about CityWorks, because I'll probably get upset about it, but it's not real time. I'm not really sure if it's ever gonna work, but that's just my.
Well, for us is
That was just a
when
comment.
somebody's closing out a ticket and I'm looking at it, I don't see it for another day or two till they bring it in, then they implement it into their computer, then it goes up on the CityWorks. If they're out there and their town phone is a hotspot, they're doing it, it automatically leaves their computer, comes to mine, and in my office, I can see it happening.
That speeds up
And
the
I can
process.
speed up the process of what I'm doing.
I think
Then it becomes
tablets,
real
less
time.
technology.
What is architectural plans for building addition?
Wastewater treatment.
$16,000 up from 8,000. What building addition? Is that in your, I can't tell because the numbers, the pages aren't numbered and I can't tell what department. See that one right there?
It's the
Building
10,
addition.
15,
Oh, okay, 50,
10, 510 account.
who's that?
Who's in the 510 account?
I mean, I don't know what 510 is. I just know it says contract services,
a 10
$16,000
account.
for building addition. I
That's
just don't know what
police
the building
department.
addition.
510 is police.
So we're funding, architectural plans for a building addition?
Is that for chief's office?
Because it said 8,000 from last year, and now it's 16,000 this year. And just, did we pocket 18, did we put that in the bank, 8,000 from last year, and we're adding 16? I'm just confused what that means.
Yes, that theoretically, that would be the 8,000 rollover that's available that he didn't spend on architectural, and now next year they want to spend 16. That's the
Plus
way That's
8,000.
the way I would read it. They would want to spend all 16
Right.
this coming year to design an add-on to the police department.
I just didn't know we were doing that.
Either did I.
Well, that's the only reason I'm asking.
Chief's coming in right now.
Chief,
Chief,
You're already on the chopping block, so come on. What's the architectural plans for building addition, 16,000 up from 8,000 last year? What building addition?
That was, you may have seen the architectural rendering on, out in Town Hall in the vestibule. And that was just a continuation of that. One of the things we prefaced that with is, since it had taken on a different direction or a bigger direction, that was more towards building and planning now. So we'd had some conversations over the past couple of budgets about enhancing the police department. And in light of the recent storm, how there were deficiencies in all parts of town departments, particularly with the town hall campus.
so it expands to the whole building rather than just the police department?
That's correct. But this was more towards more architectural, technical drawings, and Daryl's not in here, but Daryl could probably speak a little more of that, or
So
possibly.
it's 8,000 from last year that you have, that's rolling over, and you want an additional 16? Is that what that means?
No, we actually already developed, got some plans back that they're already done, architecture of this year.
$8,000. And so we want 16 more. What I don't understand is how we're making building plans when we don't have a funding source to build it. And when we finally get a funding source in 5 years, the plans are going to have to be redone. That's what I don't understand.
Part of these funds would also go to, we've got one office we're trying to develop that was, I guess Andrea had sort of a closet we turn an office, so we're looking at expanding existing areas we already have in the police department. Looking at updating booking a little bit for safety and making some room in there where we can move a little bit better.
And ma'am, we can walk to the police department after.
I've been through the police department. I've been through it many times. I don't need to walk through it. But I don't know how, I don't understand that. I'm sure, that's all I'm gonna say. You guys fine with it?
I'm not
Okay.
worried about the 8,000 when there's almost 200 other thousands that we could cut.
Do what now?
Steve read ahead of me, so most of his questions would have been questions I would have asked. And most of that money adds up to quite a bit of chunk, so conservative cuts.
That's my point.
But I'm not worried about that 8,000 when you have.
It's
some of the other-
16.
Or even the 16, because in here, just off of Steve's questions alone, there's over $200 extra thousand that we could probably cut in anticipation to revisit next year.
I think there's a whole bunch more things that we could cut out of here
It's
that
hard
we
to-
don't have to have right now.
Okay.
And
hard
I
to
would
look at it
rather
at once.
pay your officers more than spend $16,000 on rebuilding somebody's closet or whatever we're doing. I don't know.
Well, so out of the whole list that I had read off,
I'm not even
I
through.
did have a
Did you add it up?
concern. Well, the biggest one I had a concern with was unfortunately for the Parks
Lake Park.
Department, and I'm asking them if they could stall that. I do think what the manager's telling us is next Monday, he's gonna come back and say, guys, you're gonna continue to fight a morale problem, a hiring problem. We've got to address some pay study. And in order to do that, you know, we're gonna have to cut a little bit more. There's got to be a give somewhere. So if there's some other key items, Joe Dan, I read off a bunch of them pretty quick. If there's some things, I would suggest you guys just send them to the manager and let him know. The only one that I would really push hard on would be the parks and reallocating substantial portion of that 150, and I would rather see some of that go towards some of the things you had to cut out, the bathrooms. Or, for example, our baseball guys, they do some work over there, volunteers, the baseball guys do, right? Our baseball
Matt and all
league.
them.
So I'm wondering if we can get to Pleasure Island or the Hammerheads or the guys that used our soccer field so much when the county was down and see if we can get some help from them on some of that volunteer work or something. You know, let's get creative. Like you built a whole park out there, a lot of it with volunteer work. Is there an opportunity that we can get some resident help or some of the users? You know, because we do have Pisa, and I don't mean to pick on Pisa, but Pisa has grown exponentially in a league, and I would tell you 85% or better of the people that play in Pisa aren't island residents.
Yep.
And for them to wear and tear our field out to the point that we now have to spend money to overseed it and sod it, and then we're pulling that out of the budget because we don't have the money,
Lend a hand to help.
I'd rather say, put that money back in, go short on the park, and let's figure out how to maybe charge some usage fees. I'm just trying to get creative for Eric on that. Other than that, I didn't see a whole lot.
I would have said similar to exactly what Steve did. Lucky, my thought process is that whatever you're going to bring to us on Monday, please send out to us on Friday so we can look over.
Yep.
It's hard to be handed this morning and then try to fine tooth all the things that we're gonna. And the downside is that I know I'm sounding like the bully again, but this has been happening every month for the past 2 months. That the information that we're gonna be presented is given to us at that moment. So it's really hard for council to sit here and truly go through all this versus flying off the handle and asking what these things are. If we're presented this a week in advance, it allows us to address you so you can address your staff. And then the comments that we're having aren't just, oh shit, what's going on? Let me take a quick, sorry. What's this, what's that? So please, going forward, make sure that we're presenting this in a timely manner that we can actually address this, because we've said that several times in the past 2 months. In the past 2 months, we're getting this at the very last minute.
Got it.
Well, we did-
But I would say this on a positive note. I think we're very, very close. I don't want
Yeah.
staff or management to leave here thinking we're
Right.
not. I think we're very close, and the most encouraging thing I saw was we didn't have $1.5 million gap this year,
Right.
okay? I mean, so staff has done an incredible job putting together a budget. I know we keep hammering on you guys. I think you're gonna see pretty broad-based support on the property tax, maybe not unanimous, but it's pretty close. But we do have some concerns. We want to make sure our employees are paid well and that we have well compensated employees. And for me, the balance has been, how do we not hire a few to pay those we have more? And when the police department tells me they're
Right.
vastly underpaid and we stall that out because now we have a town-wide pay problem, it's just a balance. But I think we're very close, and you're to be commended on the fact that we're not seeing a huge gap, where you've come to us and said, hey, the only way to do half this wish list is to take $1 million out of the budget, out of the bank account. I think that's to be commendable.
Right, let's step in the right direction.
Well, a final question in terms of timeline and adoption. So I had scheduled, when I started this position, to be out in June. Come to find out that that is the day that we're supposed to adopt the budget. If you're open to meeting next week, is it possible for us, I don't know about protocol, so how this works. Is it possible for us to adopt the budget at that time, or does there need to be a different meeting?
No, I think we adopt the budget. You have to have a manager's message. I think you can accomplish all that in the June meeting.
Okay.
You can read the manager's message that says, here's what's in the budget, here's where it's balanced, and we can approve that subject to your final twists next Monday.
Okay.
But if you would like to have a meeting next Monday, personally, I could make that work. I would prefer if we did an evening meeting, just because it is a budget meeting for our residents. This is a workshop.
Right.
That's gonna be an official last gasp.
I recommend the evening as well.
Yeah, I got it.
We can do that, but we have bike ped, so Jerry and I will have to either reschedule bike ped.
Or push that off to another
Okay.
day.
No, that's
So I
a good
think you
point.
need to be here.
I see
Lucky.
Kim has something she wants to
Yes.
let us.
Once we have a budget message, we have to advertise that for at least 10 days, and we have to have another public hearing.
So I'm gonna ask then if you and Lucky and Noel can
Monday,
coordinate that
push it for the
schedule?
13th.
But we're voting on the budget at the June meeting, not
No,
at this
what she
June
just
3rd.
said is you cannot.
You can't until 2 days after that, right?
10.
10 from the 3rd?
So I would, you know, as much as you guys aren't gonna wanna hear that, I mean, today's the 28th. If we posted a message this Friday, I don't think we can make our June meeting, can we? You'll be
We-
close.
We can't, we'll have to schedule a special meeting.
To approve the budget.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, that's fine.
We'll get with you offline on a date that we can do that based on the 10-day schedule. We'll
But
call this
I
non-agenda
would ask
items.
him, if we're gonna have a special meeting on Monday the 3rd,
I need to know when it is.
you please, would you get with Noel and Lucky and figure out the
Push it.
schedule on what we need to do? Because we're gonna have to have a June meeting, then we're gonna have a council meeting on the 11th.
Correct.
And you're saying we need to have another meeting for the budget after the 11th. It would be no sooner than the 13th or
Or
14th.
we could vote it on at the workshop,
You can, yes.
Vote on what?
the budget.
At what workshop?
The one we already have
Towards,
scheduled
The one that's gonna be
in June,
Or we can schedule a special.
that'd be the fourth one.
Or the week after our council meeting.
We'll figure it out.
You guys figure it out and get back
Sure.
to us on possible dates.
I think you're gonna be
Well,
better
we
off
need to know,
having
'cause I
that
got a
budget
real
meeting as
tight
quickly as
schedule.
possible after our meeting next week.
Absolutely.
Which
I think
would
we
be
need to
the
have that as
13th.
quickly as possible.
Or it could be the 13th,
Could be
based
the
on who's
Okay, so
available.
our meeting's on the 11th. And we're gonna meet on June 3rd, right?
Lucky is asking for a meeting next Monday, the 3rd. And I
Can't
think
do it
what
until 10
what
days.
we had talked about was doing that Monday evening. I heard Joe
Right.
say he would not be in town. That is a workshop meeting at night to talk about the final budget.
Okay.
And then I believe we have a regularly scheduled council meeting on June 11th.
Right.
Correct.
Kim has said that does
We
not
don't have
leave us
time.
enough notice time. So we will have an additional meeting after the 11th to approve the Town of Carolina Beach's 2019 and 20 budget.
So we're gonna need to set that on June 3rd to give her 10 days.
That's what we're saying now.
So,
I'm asking Kim if she'll come up with that schedule. So next Monday, we'll know what to set.
Yes.
Please, I mean, I'm hearing from Joe and others that
No,
they're.
I'll be there. I'll be there. I got it. Any other
Monday
comments on
nights.
the budget? Yeah. Joe Dan, you're up.
just, okay, sorry. Go.
I said my piece. But I need, like I said, I'll go through this and shoot out my things if I need to, if not, Monday.
You want to save them on Monday? That's really kind of where we're going with this.
Yeah, Monday night, I'm cool Monday night.
That's fine.
Yeah, pick a time Monday night. I'm good. Leanne, you got a
Monday
Just-
night's
just-
good.
For Lucky and for staff, I am all about paying people more money. I am fine with that. However, I want you to go through this line by line, just like we were trying to do, and look again at these different things that we're just pulling out, saying, wait a minute, what about this? What about this? For every $1,000 adds up. Every $1,000 or 10,000 or 15 adds up to several $100,000 where we can pay these people more money. So I'm not saying we don't need all these things in the budget. I'm just saying, do we? That's my question mark, to you.
Yes, ma'am.
That's all I have to say. I just challenge you, and I do want to see each position, what the benefit package is in another column.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just a few things, 5 things, and I'll be fast. Lucky, we'll bring to you those cuts, those who haven't had a chance to present them, proposed cuts Monday at the meeting. And maybe that helps to address, as others have said, that pay gap that the study determined, Debbie, please clarify the state restricted, the presentation of the state restricted 8% and whatever we have in a snapshot in time, as it was last June the 30th, of 3.1 million. They're 2 separate line items in what funds we have available. My read might not be what the state says it is, but it looks close to 30. Anyway, the mandated permitting fees that we had to assume the loss of after Florence, any chance that 55 comes back? Or is that just wishful thinking? It's not an answer now, but maybe something you can
I
get.
think that was coming from the state, wasn't it?
The state made the
Right, they
municipalities,
did.
yeah.
Yeah, and so far, they haven't said that they're gonna give it back.
Okay, just to follow up then. And I noticed, and I talked to Steve about it too, and he just brought it up earlier, the M&O cost, maintenance and operation costs. Stormwater is what I hear all the time. It's sort of now meet Don Quixote chasing after windmills, but the money going, the increase in M&O is completely defensible there, given that that's the number one issue that the residents have brought to us, at least in surveys and anecdotal. So that makes sense. Short of that, the maintenance and ops should follow, I think, more of a standard rate of inflation increase, fuels, utilities. So anything other than ops department, spikes in maintenance in the M&O line, can you just give a quick recap on what those are for the other departments? And lastly, Lucky, good job today. So I think what you're proposing broadly in the taxes is returning the town's tax rate to what it was in FY 13 and 14. Is that accurate?
It's close to that. I have to go back and look at that number.
Okay.
But we haven't increased taxes or property taxes. We have increased utilities, utility
Yeah,
rates.
now I'm talking
But-
about, right, enterprise
prop-
fund related, but.
Property taxes will be closer towards that, that mark. that
So I'm just going to say, because one on the 6th, we have a town hall, Joe, Dan, and I, just arm me with the defensible reasons
Sure.
why we're going up, not just for pay.
Just he said so.
That's all. Any non-agenda items, guys? That's
I
all
have
I
a few
got.
things. First thing, Mark, just randomly, I know you said next year we're going to look into a handful of big projects for you guys. Just asterisk, roundabout number, what do you think?
5 million? Good answer.
How realistic is 5 million? Is that,
I'd like to be 4.5 when we're done, but, you know, depending on what we're looking at, these are still projects that we're kind of in the beta phase of just starting and getting idea estimates, but we haven't really gone deep enough in to get a full drawn-out engineering report on. But it's substantial.
the reason I asked that is that if that's that big of a number, and we keep talking about the possibility of buying land. We spoke about it several times, and we're at the point that it just needs to be, I think it needs to be done. I know Steve's on board, I know we constantly speak about this, but there's a possibility you may lose that parking spot. I think that we're at that point that we loosely talk about when to buy property. Mark, you have to say, yeah, it's just, it gives me leeway into this, is that now's that time to just roll everything into one.
You know, there's no, I agree, Joe Dan, there's no good time to spend money when the town, you know, I mean, it's hard. But I watch all the comments on social media, and I don't think everyone in town is on social media, but it's interesting to see, and I hear all these people saying, oh, we need to protect our small town, we need to do this, we need to make sure we don't lose the flavor that everyone moved here with. This past weekend, I was reminded that it was 15 years ago today that I rolled into town with another family. Those boardwalk lots have been vacant for at least 12 or 15 years. And so people have gotten very accustomed to that. And then we started with the boardwalk makeover 10, 12 years ago. We started getting the amusement rides back. And now everyone says, oh man, that's what Carolina Beach is all about. And I see all the comments, people saying, oh man, I wish it was like it was in the 80s and 90s. And I kind of chuckle because what I heard in the 80s and 90s is they were arresting a lot of people. One year we had 8 murders. We had bars, strip bars on the boardwalk.
Right.
We had a lot of different flavor than what people are remembering.
They forget that part.
You know, high school to me was a blast until I really think about it. So, you know, you always think the past was something else. So my point is, I have reached out for the last 3 years to Matt Murphy and Ken Kofer and ask them what they want for those lots down there, and that number keeps changing. But now that you have 2 new structures going up on Cape Fear, if you can visualize one of those structures on the vacant lot right there to the left of the gazebo where they have all those rides crowded in this year, you're going to see a substantial change, in my opinion, and I think people are going to come back and say, why didn't we do something? And for me, I mean, yeah, it's an election year. Yep, I get that. Yep, we're talking about raising taxes. Maybe it's falling on the sword, but I really think we need to figure out a price and figure out a long-term how to buy. Best case would be to buy both of them. Worst case would be to at least get one of them. Personally, I'd like to see a long-term contract with a provider like we do at the lake to provide a merry-go-round and a Ferris wheel on one lot, and the other smaller lot to the left of the gazebo having some kind of open space, maybe a climbing wall, maybe a splash pad. I hear all the old timers say, oh, we have a splash pad, it's called the ocean. I get that, okay? But I also hear a lot of people say it'd be really nice as a community feature. These are the great things that are happening around the country. You know, we're talking several $1 million, and it's gonna be difficult, but I pushed Joe Dan over the weekend because I was down there for Thursday night, and
You know, it'll be before we're gonna be gone, but people are gonna be like, man, that council really blew it by not figuring out a way to buy that stuff.
They're already saying that.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that's very defensible too, because I think anecdotally, we all hear it. And to Steve's point, we're running out of the opportunities to, before it becomes cost prohibitive.
And it could be cost prohibitive now, but I mean, it's one of those things that as a community, if we just don't step up as a council and bite the bullet and take the political heat.
There's a few spots that we could look at besides just the boardwalk, but yes.
And I understand that, Joe Dan, and these workshops, we need to have more conversation about really where we want to see the community go. And I've encouraged Lucky to set aside 30 minutes at future workshops to talk about where we want the community to go. Yeah, it'd be nice to pick up more open space, but I do think we had some residents voiced a concern, and originally, without a plan, it's hard to go out and say, we're gonna go buy this stuff without a plan. So we have CBP 3 that's set up to hold stuff that then the town can go out and get a grant. Grants are always, you know, everyone says, oh, go get free money. It's just not that easy. And sometimes you just have to stand up as a community and say, we gotta write a check. Everyone's gonna have to pay a little more. On an immediate 6 inches in front of my face, I could see us moving forward on the 2 at the boardwalk or some combination. Buying the other stuff is open space. I'd like to have a plan.
Or not necessarily open space, but Coles Motel could be brought, knocked down, and put 50 to 60 parking spots in.
You can't get 50 or 60 on Coles. We looked at that. But I mean, you could knock it down and but, yes.
You can
I'm
get
willing to
some.
have that.
Our Parks and Rec has a master plan, so where that lot there on Cape Fear could be something that we know we want to look into long-term, or our ops department. So it's not just necessarily open space, it's feasibility of taking care of our residents long-term.
Right.
Not just parking or open space, but.
Right. It is a plan.
Right.
So that's one of the things. My second thing for non-agenda is that from Scotchman's next to Finn's down to past BB&T, a good portion of our parking spots are not flush with the road, but they stick out. My recommendation is we switch those to compact vehicles only, because a good portion of vehicles that I saw there this entire weekend were 17, 18-foot pickup trucks. People that are coming out making left-hand turns, right-hand turns with residents in the road because we had somebody get hit. That if we switch that out to compact vehicles, the safety aspect is drastically going to help a little bit easier. I'm sure everyone knows, even when you're out there riding your bikes, because you can't ride your bikes on the sidewalks, those pickup trucks, you're definitely impeding into traffic with your bicycle. Those are my two main things for non-agenda.
Any
I mean,
save rounds?
I just have one thing to say. I agree 100%. We need to start talking about open space, and do we need to put that on an agenda about how that might work or how we might pay for it? I
What
know.
our vision is
Or a plan for
I-
it?
And we're talking about it, but we're not doing anything. So I do think we need to.
I
look at
agree. We
some
need to
path
do
forward.
something. I would, you know.
We need to get through this budget, but
You're talking about roughly $15,000 a month, so what is that, $180,000 a year to have a $2 million loan.
Right.
And the rides that are out there now pay $100,000 to rent that space for the summer, correct?
No. They used to pay 100, and it was some revenue share. I don't know what they're paying on the remaining 2. But there is some revenue opportunity if you had a long-term lease on something. But I mean, I think what the town has to do is be prepared to say it's $170,000 a year for $2 million.
Yeah.
I mean.
And then we find,
How would you guys, I mean, that's 3/4 of a point. That's one more point on the property tax. I'm not saying we should go from 2 to 3, but I'm saying maybe we should look at going from 2 to 3.
yeah,
And before we talk about building that bathroom, we need to have some conversations about what we're gonna do down at the boardwalk. If we're gonna enter into some kind of open space, maybe we don't wanna start that construction just yet on that new facility,
Oh, right across from right in front of the
Yeah.
court.
because
Right,
it's
it's right there.
bargaining.
Yeah.
You understand where I'm,
I got it.
yeah, 100%.
Right, so
so I
I
don't
mean,
think
I'm
we
not
need to
a-
start
I mean,
construction on that when we can use that as a.
I will tell you,
some bargaining.
in speaking to the property owners, he said, we already have plans.
They do.
They're planning right now for a 3rd building right there on that lot, and they've already been in there. I don't know if those lots are worth X or Y, but they're worth more than, you know, and.
Or we
I
can
just
still look at
didn't-
the shell shop. That's not sold.
So I'm with Joe Dan. I'm not sure I would jump out much past the stuff in the immediate boardwalk area at this particular point. I'm certainly open to some discussions. I heard some of our residents that came forward before and said you can't buy open space. You can't buy property if you're borrowing money, but at some point, we need to do it. Otherwise, I'm just,
I think it depends on what the property's purpose is, and we can justify that we have to have that service. But yeah, it's a question we have to decide as the council, and it's one that certainly would, I don't know that we can get it done before the budget has to.
well, you're out of time. I've been asking about this for 3 years. I pushed it up the last year.
All right, so we
and
just
last
said,
year.
let's go
I've been
let's go
asked
out.
So what I'm gonna
And-
say
and
is
we've
that next
discussed-
Monday, I'm gonna make a formal proposal next Monday.
I've addressed it for a year and a half with you.
And then you guys we can decide as a collective council. Tom, I agree.
Yeah.
But by this time next year, there'll be a third
That's
building
right.
down there. This
I
time
would
next
say-
year, there won't be any other amusement rides down there.
So let's
Right.
include it on the agenda for Monday evening, a time to be determined for the meeting. And,
Really quick.
yeah,
Sorry to
Joe
cut you
Dan,
off.
go ahead.
How quick can we address the DOT? Because that accident that happened,
Closed session.
it's back on everyone's front burner again, and it was less than 2 months ago, so now it's one of those things that we need them to understand that we need action as quickly as possible, even if that means we are footing the bill for stuff. We're only gonna get busier going into the summer, and I know safety is a huge thing for you.
Sir.
I think we were waiting on the 45 business days to come back on the formal.
He went down.
So middle of June, give or take, so we give
Can
something
we show
to
up
the
at their
public.
door every day until it comes out, and just, that way, that urgency to them is as important as it is to us, because our residents, it was,
Yeah. Second accident, really.
So,
Okay.
you know, I mean, and just one more comment, if we lose that Marriott lot, which we're only leasing, and somebody decides to build on that, we've lost a lot of parking.
So I think we make a decision on that Monday to the urgency of it prior to the budget season in consideration for another point, Lucky, to factor into your projections.
Yep.
Am I missing anything, guys?
no,
Okay,
no,
okay, with that,
closed session.
that's no, yes.
Yep.
So I make a motion to go into closed session to discuss a real estate matter in accordance with North Carolina General Statute 143.318.11A5. Property being discussed is 310 Canal Drive for the purpose of parking. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.